At 9:15 in the evening, while the candles on my son's birthday cake were still warm and untouched, my sister stood up in the middle of a packed downtown Chicago steakhouse and screamed that I had betrayed the family. Crystal glasses rattled. A server froze mid-step with a tray of filet mignon. My 10-year-old son stared at me like I had just broken something sacred, and all I said, calmly, evenly, almost gently, was, "The reservation was for 12, not 12-ish, not 12 plus, and not on my tab." That was the moment everything shifted. Not when the police cruiser's lights flashed against the restaurant windows, not when my sister's credit card was declined, not when my parents realized I wasn't reaching for mine to fix it. It shifted when I chose not to absorb the chaos. For 10 years, I had been the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who paid to keep the peace. That night, at my son Ethan's 10th birthday dinner, I stopped paying, and it cost more than lobster and wine. I'm Avery Morgan. I'm 35 years old, and I run operations for a regional supply chain company in Chicago. My entire life revolves around precision, capacity planning, contingency mapping. You cannot load more cargo onto a truck than its weight limit allows. You cannot stretch a 12-seat reservation into 22 without consequence. Systems collapse when boundaries are ignored. My sister Madison never believed in limits. Ethan's 10th birthday mattered to me more than I let on. 10 is a bridge year. Not a baby anymore. Not a teenager yet. A double-digit milestone. I wanted him to feel celebrated without chaos. That meant structure. That meant control. I booked a private dining space at a high-end steakhouse in River North 3 weeks in advance, 12 seats. Exactly 12. Me, Ethan, my husband Daniel, Ethan's 2 best friends and their parents. My parents. That was it. 12 chairs, 12 place settings, 12 leather-bound menus. I confirmed the reservation twice. I pre-selected appetizers so the kids wouldn't have to wait. I scheduled the cake presentation for 8:45. I even requested that the head of the table be reserved for Ethan. Because details matter. My sister Madison was not invited, not because I hate her, not because I'm cruel, but because every time Madison attends something I plan, the head count doubles and the bill triples. Madison is 38, the golden child of the Morgan family. Charismatic, loud, always arriving like she's stepping onto a stage. She drives whatever SUV looks impressive that year. She orders without glancing at the price column. She lives champagne on what is very clearly a beer budget. And for 10 years, when that budget ran short, I quietly bridged the gap. A bounced car payment here. A temporary credit card emergency there. A last-minute addition to a dinner reservation that somehow landed on my card. I told myself it was easier. That night was supposed to be different. We arrived at 6:35. Ethan in a navy blazer, hair combed back like he was attending a board meeting. He squeezed my hand as we walked into the restaurant. I remember thinking how tall he looked. The host smiled, then hesitated. "Ms. Morgan," he said carefully, "your party has already begun seating." My stomach dropped. "Already begun seating?" "Yes," he said. "They said they were the Morgan birthday group." I didn't need to ask who. I turned the corner toward the private dining section and stopped cold. There she was, Madison, seated at the head of the table, Ethan's chair, a bottle of red wine already open, another breathing beside it, a seafood tower rising like a monument in the center. Her husband Greg leaning back like he owned the place. 3 kids glued to their phones. My parents seated comfortably. And Madison's friend Kelsey laughing loudly while snapping photos of the Lobster. 10 additional people. 10. She saw me and threw her arms wide. "Avery, we decided to make it a real family affair." My son was still standing behind me. That was the part that hurt. Not the wine, not the audacity. The way Ethan looked at the table, then at me, and quietly asked, "Where do I sit?" Madison stood up, air-kissed the air near my cheek, and said, "We ordered a couple bottles to get things started. You don't mind, right? It's a celebration." I glanced at the label. $150 a bottle. There were 3. I did the math automatically. I always do. Madison, I said evenly. This reservation was for 12. Oh, relax, she waved me off. They can squeeze in extra chairs. I told the host it would be fine. We're family. Family. That word has been used as leverage more times than I can count. I stepped aside and quietly asked the host if there was another private space available. He hesitated, then nodded. There's an executive dining room in the back. Perfect, I said. I turned back to the table. Ethan, I said brightly, change of plans, we got upgraded. Madison blinked. I gathered my actual invited guests and walked them through the kitchen corridor into the executive room. It was quieter, smaller, more private, and calm. I handed the manager my corporate card. This covers the executive room only, I said clearly. Separate checks for any other table. He nodded. That was the pivot. Back in the main dining area, Madison kept ordering. Another bottle of wine, 2 lobster entrees, a tomahawk steak, dessert flights, because she believed I would fix it. At 9:15, the check arrived at her table. $1,247. I didn't see the bill drop, but I heard the tone shift instantly. Voices rose, chairs scraped. The manager was summoned. Put it on Avery's card, Madison insisted. The manager explained gently that my party had already closed out separately. That's when she stood up and started shouting. I walked out of the executive room when I heard my name. She was flushed, furious. You're really going to humiliate me over money? She demanded. I looked at the receipt. Itemized, clear, precise. I invited 12 people, I said. You brought 10 uninvited guests and ordered independently. Her husband's card was declined. So was hers. Greg whispered something about overdraft protection. My parents looked stunned. And that's when I said it. The reservation was for 12. Not 12-ish, not 12 plus, and not on my tab. The restaurant manager added a mandatory gratuity. Madison accused me of betrayal. She said I was choosing money over family. What she didn't understand was this wasn't about money. It was about pattern, about a decade of small rescues that had grown into entitlement. The police were called when she refused to settle the bill. To avoid escalation, she left her driver's license and phone as collateral while Greg drove across town withdrawing cash from multiple ATMs. The flashing lights outside reflected against the glass like a warning. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I went back to the executive room, where Ethan was opening presents and laughing with his friends, and I stayed there, because that room represented something I had never fully protected before, my own peace. We left through the kitchen exit. Madison was still arguing when we drove away. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, Daniel asked quietly, "Are you okay?" I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone as messages poured in from family members calling me cold, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt something unexpected, relief. Because the truth was simple. You cannot keep adding weight to a system without collapse. You cannot keep paying for someone else's delusion without funding it. And you cannot stretch a 12-seat reservation into something it was never designed to hold. That night wasn't the end of my family. It was the audit. And audits reveal everything. The next morning, I woke up to 43 unread messages and a silence in my chest that felt almost peaceful. For 10 years, the morning after any family gathering usually came with damage control. Someone's feelings hurt. Someone's comment misunderstood. Someone needing money wired quietly before lunch. I had grown used to being the stabilizer, the quiet fixer who absorbed impact before it reached anyone else. This time, I didn't move. I lay there for a full minute staring at the ceiling while the winter light filtered through the blinds. Daniel was already up, making coffee downstairs. Ethan was still asleep, one arm thrown over the drone he'd insisted on keeping beside his pillow. I picked up my phone. Madison had texted at least 12 times. "You embarrassed me. You made me look poor. Mom is crying. Dad is furious. How could you do this on Ethan's birthday?" I read them once, then again. My heart rate didn't spike. That surprised me. For years, her messages had worked like a trigger. Guilt first, then urgency, then the reflex to fix. Not this time. I scrolled further. A message from my mother. Call me, please. Another from my father. We need to talk. And a group chat notification from extended family already buzzing. I set the phone down. Daniel walked in with 2 mugs of coffee and studied my face carefully. Battlefield? He asked. More like fallout, I said. He sat across from me at the kitchen table. You regret it? I considered the question honestly. No, I said. I regret not doing it sooner. That was the first truth I allowed myself to say out loud. At 10:30, my mother called again. I answered this time. Avery, she began, her voice tight. Last night was unnecessary. Was it? I asked calmly. You left your sister stranded. She ordered $1,200 of food without asking. She assumed... Yes, I interrupted gently. She assumed. There was a pause. That's what family does, my mother said softly. We assume we have each other's backs. I leaned back in my chair. Having someone's back doesn't mean financing their denial. Silence stretched on the other end. You humiliated her, my mother whispered. She humiliated herself, I replied. In public, loudly. My father took the phone. You could have covered it and dealt with it privately, he said, his tone firm but not angry. And that would have changed what? I asked. Another year? Another birthday? Another bill? He didn't answer. I continued. Dad, this isn't about the steakhouse. This is about a pattern. 10 years of small rescues. 10 years of over-ordering because she believed I would step in. He exhaled slowly. You've always been the responsible one, he said. Yes, I said quietly. And that doesn't mean I'm responsible for everyone. The line went quiet again. Your sister feels betrayed, my mother said after a moment. I felt used, I replied. That word landed heavier than I expected. Used. Because that was the underlying truth I had avoided naming. Madison had never seen my stability as something I built. She saw it as something available, like a shared account she could tap into without permission. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. There's something grounding about numbers. Spreadsheets don't argue. They don't manipulate. They just calculate. I pulled up Ethan's 529 college savings account. Then I transferred exactly $1,247 into it. The number felt deliberate, intentional. The money that could have evaporated into wine and lobster now sat invested, earning interest for my son's future. I stared at the confirmation screen longer than necessary. Reallocation, not revenge. By noon, the story had started circulating. A cousin texted me a screenshot of Madison's Facebook post. Family isn't about money, it's about loyalty. Imagine inviting your sister to your nephew's birthday and then abandoning her with the bill to make a point. Some people let success turn their hearts cold, no names mentioned. But everyone knew. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I watched. Within an hour, comments began appearing. Oh my gosh, that's awful. Family shouldn't do that. Money isn't everything. Then one reply from Ethan's friend's mother. There were separate tables, that was it, 4 words. But they changed the tone. Because truth doesn't need volume. Madison deleted that comment within minutes. Then she tagged me directly. Care to explain? I stared at the notification. Daniel leaned over my shoulder. You going to respond? He asked. No, I said. Silence is uncomfortable for people who rely on noise. I wasn't playing that game. Around 3 p.m, I received a private message from Greg. I wasn't expecting that. He rarely contacted me directly. Usually he let Madison handle communication. Hey, just wanted to say things escalated fast last night. I didn't realize how high the total would be. I read it twice. I didn't realize. He had ordered the tomahawk steak, the seafood tower, the extra round of drinks. I typed carefully. You ordered without asking. That's not escalation, that's choice. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Finally, We're in a tight spot financially. Didn't want it to go that far. There it was. The crack in the performance. How tight? I asked. Long pause. Cards are maxed. Overdraft fees hit this morning. Mortgage payments due next week. I sat back slowly. For years, Madison's lifestyle had been polished. Designer labels, weekend brunch photos, subtle hints about being comfortable. Now the curtain was lifting. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I asked a simple question. Why did you assume I would pay? No dots appeared this time. That question lingered unanswered. Around 5 p.m., Madison called. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She demanded. Enjoying what? Watching me scramble. Watching everyone talk about it. I'm not watching, I said calmly. I'm at home. You knew we didn't have that kind of money. Then you shouldn't have ordered it. You've always covered before. There it was. Not accusation. Expectation. Yes, I said, and that was my mistake. She went quiet. You made me look poor, she said finally. You made yourself look reckless, I replied. She started crying then. Not dramatic sobbing. Real tears. I didn't want Kelsey to think we couldn't afford it, she whispered. The truth slipped out almost accidentally. You ordered wine to impress your friend? I asked softly. I didn't want to look small. I closed my eyes for a second. This wasn't about hunger or celebration. It was about image. Madison, I said carefully, looking wealthy and being stable are not the same thing. You think you're better than me? She snapped suddenly. No, I said. I think I plan better than you. That silenced her. For years, she had confused my calm with judgment. It wasn't superiority, it was structure. You could have just helped me quietly, she said again, circling back. And then what? I asked. Christmas? Next birthday? Another surprise? She didn't answer. Because she knew. After we hung up, Daniel found me standing at the window staring at the Chicago skyline. You okay? He asked. She didn't want to look small, I said. He nodded slowly. That's expensive, he replied. The next morning, I learned their SUV payment had bounced. 3 days later, the leasing company repossessed it. The illusion wasn't just cracked, it was collapsing. My father called again that evening. We didn't know it was this bad, he admitted quietly. Did you ask? I said gently. He didn't respond. For years they had defended her, enabled her, softened consequences before they landed. Now there was nothing to soften. She says you ruined her, my mother said in the background. I let that sit for a moment. Then I answered. I didn't ruin her, I said. I removed myself from the equation. That distinction mattered, because for the first time in a decade I wasn't absorbing someone else's math. And when you stop absorbing, gravity does the rest. By the end of that week, the story had split into 2 versions. In Madison's version, I had staged a public betrayal. I had invited her, encouraged her to order, and then blindsided her to prove a point about money. In my version, I had enforced a boundary that should have existed 10 years earlier. The uncomfortable truth was that for most of our lives, the family preferred her version. Sunday came, and with it the usual standing invitation to my parents' house for dinner. For years, those Sundays had been predictable. Pot roast, football murmuring from the living room, Madison recounting some dramatic inconvenience that required sympathy or subtle financial assistance. Daniel asked if I wanted to go. Yes, I said. I'm not avoiding my own family. When we arrived, Madison's SUV was gone. The driveway looked strangely empty without it. Instead, Greg's older sedan was parked awkwardly near the curb. Inside, the tension was thick enough to feel. Madison was already there, seated stiffly at the dining table. No designer handbag in sight, no exaggerated entrance. Her eyes were puffy, but her posture was defensive. My mother busied herself in the kitchen as if chopping vegetables required extreme concentration. My father sat at the head of the table, expression neutral but tired. "Hi," I said simply. Madison didn't respond at first. Then she nodded once, curt. Ethan slipped past us and ran toward his grandfather, unaware of the temperature shift. We took our seats. For the first 10 minutes, conversation hovered on safe ground. School, weather, work, anything but the steakhouse. Then Madison set her fork down. "You really couldn't have handled that differently?" she asked, staring at her plate instead of me. I didn't raise my voice. "I handled it clearly. You made it public." "You made it public when you stood up and screamed." Her jaw tightened. I panicked. "Because the bill existed?" I asked. "Because you embarrassed me." I leaned forward slightly. "Madison, you were embarrassed because the reality didn't match the image." She looked up sharply. "You think I fake my life?" "I think you perform it," I said evenly. The table went silent. My mother finally spoke. She just wanted to be part of Ethan's birthday. "She was welcome to ask," I replied. "She's your sister," my mother insisted. "And I'm her sister," I said, which means she could have picked up the phone instead of showing up with 10 extra people. Greg cleared his throat. "I thought you knew," he said quietly. "Knew what?" I asked. "That we were coming." "I didn't," I replied. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "She told me it was all set." There it was again, assumption layered on assumption. "Why would I book 12 seats and expect 22? I asked calmly. No one answered. Madison pushed her chair back slightly. "You've always acted like you're better because you manage money," she said. "Like that makes you morally superior." "I don't think I'm superior," I said. "I think I'm disciplined." She laughed bitterly. "You make spreadsheets for fun." "Yes," I said simply. My father rubbed his temples. "Enough," he muttered. But this wasn't enough. Not yet. "For 10 years," I continued, "I've covered small things, quietly. I never asked for recognition. I never threw it in your face. But every time I paid, the assumption grew." "I never asked you to," Madison snapped. "No," I agreed. "You just expected me to." That hit. Greg looked down. My mother exhaled shakily. "She's under pressure," she said. "The mortgage, the kids, and I'm not?" I asked gently. "I have a mortgage. I have a child. I just don't hide it behind wine labels." Madison stood up abruptly. "You think I'm irresponsible. I think you're overwhelmed and pretending you're not." Her eyes flashed. "Don't psychoanalyze me." "I'm not," I said. "I'm stating facts." Silence again. My father finally spoke, voice lower than usual. "How bad is it?" he asked Greg. Greg hesitated, then answered. "About 60,000 in credit cards." My mother gasped. Madison shot him a furious look. "Why would you say that?" "Because it's true," he said quietly. The room shifted. Numbers have weight when spoken out loud. 60,000, my father repeated. Madison crossed her arms. "It's temporary." "It's not temporary if minimum payments are all you're making," I said before I could stop myself. She glared at me. "You don't get to lecture." "I'm not lecturing," I said. "I'm explaining why I didn't pay." My mother sank into a chair. "We didn't know," she whispered. "That's the problem," I said softly. "No one asks." For years, Madison's crises had been softened before they fully surfaced. My parents assumed she'd figure it out. I assumed if I stepped in quietly it would stabilize things. We were all enabling something. Greg ran a hand through his hair. "The SUV got repossessed," he said quietly. The room froze. "When?" my father asked. "Tuesday." Madison looked like she might cry, but anger hardened her face instead. "You're all enjoying this," she said. "No," I replied immediately. "I'm relieved." She stared at me. "Relieved?" "Yes, because now it's honest." That word hung there. Honest. No more curated Instagram posts. No more staged brunches. No more pretending overdraft notices didn't exist. Honesty is uncomfortable, but it's stable. My father leaned back slowly. "We tried to help," he said to Madison. "You didn't help," she shot back. "You spoiled." He flinched slightly. "That's not fair," my mother whispered. "It is," I said gently. "Rescuing isn't the same as helping." Madison sank back into her chair. "You think this is some grand lesson?" she asked me. "No," I said. "It's a reset." "For you," she snapped. "For all of us." She stared at the table. Greg finally looked at me directly. "What would you have done?" he asked. "If it had been me." I considered carefully before answering. "I would have asked," I said. "For money?" "For clarity," I corrected. "Before ordering anything, before showing up." Madison shook her head. "You'd never understand the pressure." "Try me," I said quietly. She hesitated. Then something unexpected happened. Her shoulders dropped. "I didn't want to look like I was falling behind," she admitted. "Behind who?" I asked. "You," she said flatly. The admission landed heavier than the credit card debt. "I never competed with you," I said. "You didn't have to," she replied. Silence again. For the first time, I saw something different in her expression. Not entitlement. Fear. "My kids think we're rich," she said. "I didn't want them to know." Greg squeezed her hand. "They know now," he said gently. That was the first moment that didn't feel like a fight. It felt like reality settling. My father stood slowly. "We're not paying this off," he said firmly. Madison looked up, startled. "You're not?" "No," he said. "We can't." The golden child safety net had finally thinned. Madison's eyes moved to me. "You happy?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm not fixing it." She looked away. Dinner continued awkwardly, but calmer. No one raised their voice again. When we left, Madison didn't hug me, but she didn't accuse me either. That was new. In the car, Daniel glanced over at me. "You good?" "I think so," I said. "How does it feel?" "Like gravity," I replied. "Because when you stop holding something up, it doesn't explode. It simply falls to where it was always headed. And sometimes, that's the only way to rebuild." That night, I checked Ethan's college fund again. The numbers hadn't changed much in a week, but the direction had. Upward, slowly, steadily, without performance, without drama, just growth. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Monday morning felt sharper than usual, not because of the emails stacked in my inbox or the weekly operations review waiting on my calendar. It felt sharp because for the first time in years, I wasn't carrying a hidden side account in my head labeled Madison Emergency. I walked into the office at 8 sharp, coffee in hand, heels clicking against polished concrete. Sterling Supply Group runs on timing. Trucks don't care about family drama. Freight doesn't adjust itself for emotional turbulence. And that steadiness grounded me. My assistant, Carla, looked up as I passed her desk. "You look lighter," she said carefully. "Do I?" I asked. "Like you stopped holding something." I almost laughed. Something like that. In the conference room, the leadership team gathered around the long glass table. Screens lit up with shipment routes, capacity charts, vendor delays, control, structure, accountability. If a supplier overpromises and underdelivers, we don't quietly absorb the loss. We renegotiate, or we cut ties. I realized halfway through the meeting how absurd it was that I had applied stricter standards to warehouse contracts than to my own family. At 10:30, my phone buzzed with a notification. Credit monitoring alert. I frowned and opened it. New inquiry on Madison Morgan's account. I hadn't subscribed to her credit monitoring. Then I remembered. 2 years ago, when she refinanced the SUV, she had used me as a co-signer for a temporary bridge loan. She swore it would be short-term, 90 days. I had insisted on removing my name afterward. Had I? My stomach tightened. I stepped out of the conference room and called the bank. After 15 minutes navigating automated prompts, I reached a representative. Yes, the woman confirmed. You are listed as a secondary contact on an auto lease account. Secondary contact. Not cosigner, but close enough. And what does that mean? I asked evenly. It means in the event of default, we notify you. I closed my eyes briefly. Has there been a default? There was a missed payment. The vehicle has been repossessed. The account is in collections. I felt heat rise in my chest. And my liability? You are not financially responsible for the balance, she said. However, your name is attached as a reference. A reference. The word tasted sour. Remove me, I said. That will require the primary account holder's authorization. Of course it would. When I hung up, my pulse was steady, but my mind was racing. 10 years of small rescues. 10 years of blurred lines. Had I ever fully separated? I texted Madison. We need to talk about the lease. Her response came within seconds. You're not on it. I called her. She answered on the second ring. I'm not responsible for your SUV, I said immediately. You're not, she snapped. Relax. I'm listed as a secondary contact. Silence. That's just paperwork, she said finally. It's not just paperwork, I replied. It's access. You're not paying anything. That's not the point, she sighed loudly. You're being dramatic. I almost laughed at that. I'm being precise, I said. Remove my name. It's already in collections, she muttered. That's your issue. You act like I did this to you. You attached me to your debt, I said calmly, without clarifying. She went quiet. I didn't think it mattered, she said finally. That sentence crystallized everything. She didn't think it mattered. My name, my credit, my boundaries. I kept my tone even. It matters. Another silence. Fine, she said. I'll call them. I want confirmation. You don't trust me, she shot back. No, I said simply. That answer hung there. Then she hung up. Back in the conference room, I resumed the meeting as if nothing had happened. But inside, something clicked into place. This wasn't just about money, it was about assumption, assuming access, assuming backup, assuming rescue. At lunch, Daniel called. You sound tense, he said. I'm still tied to the SUV lease. What? Secondary contact, collections. He let out a slow whistle. Do you owe? No. Then what's the issue? The issue is she didn't think it mattered. He was quiet for a moment. You're untangling more than you realized, he said finally. He was right. Boundaries aren't a single sentence at a restaurant. They're an audit. And audits uncover hidden attachments. That afternoon, I pulled up every document I had signed in the last decade. Bridge loan agreements, temporary guarantor forms, short-term assistance transfers. I wasn't legally exposed beyond that secondary contact, but emotionally, deeply. At 4 p.m., Madison texted. They said it takes 30 days to remove a reference. Send me the confirmation email, I replied. She didn't respond for 20 minutes. Then a forwarded message appeared. I scanned it carefully. 30-day review, not immediate removal. I called the bank again. This form requires signature from both parties, the representative explained. Then I want it sent to me directly, I said. I forwarded the form to Madison. Sign it tonight. You don't have to bark orders, she replied. This isn't an order, it's protection. For yourself or for me? She shot back. For both of us. She didn't respond. That evening, my father called. She's stressed, he said gently. She's responsible, I corrected. She says you're distancing yourself from the family. I'm separating finances, I said. Not love. There was a long pause. You always were the practical one, he said. And she always knew that, I replied. He didn't argue, because he knew. After dinner, Ethan sat at the kitchen island building a small Lego drone attachment. Mom, he asked casually. Yes? Are you mad at Aunt Madison? I paused. I'm firm, I said. What's that mean? It means I'm not yelling, but I'm not bending. He nodded thoughtfully. Like when I want extra screen time? Exactly, I said. He grinned. Boundaries, he declared proudly. I smiled. Yes, boundaries. Later that night, Madison finally signed the form. No message attached, just a scanned signature. It felt transactional, which for once was fine. As I closed my laptop, I realized something important. For years, I thought saying no would fracture the family. But what actually fractured it was pretending yes meant nothing. Systems fail quietly before they collapse loudly. The steakhouse wasn't the explosion, it was the exposure. And exposure, while uncomfortable, is honest. In bed, Daniel turned toward me. You okay? He asked softly. I think I'm finally untangling, I said. He brushed a strand of hair from my face. You don't have to carry everyone. I know, I replied, but knowing and doing are different. That night, I slept deeply. No rescue plans forming in the background. No mental math calculating how to absorb someone else's shortfall, just quiet. Because when you remove your name from someone else's debt, financial or emotional, you reclaim more than money. You reclaim space. And space, I was learning, is where peace begins. The first flying monkey arrived on Tuesday afternoon. Her name was Aunt Lorraine, and she had perfected the art of emotional diplomacy long before I was old enough to recognize it. She called at 3:14 p.m., right as I was reviewing freight projections for the next quarter. Avery, sweetheart, she began in a tone soaked with concern. What on earth happened at that restaurant? I muted my laptop microphone and leaned back in my chair. Which version did you hear? I asked calmly. The one where you left your sister with a bill she couldn't pay, Lorraine replied. In front of police. She ordered food she couldn't afford, I said. That's the version that matters. Lorraine sighed dramatically. She said you invited her. I didn't. She said you knew she was coming. I didn't. She said you encouraged her to order. I almost laughed. I was in a separate dining room. Silence. Well, Lorraine said carefully, family doesn't keep score like that. I'm not keeping score, I replied. I'm keeping boundaries. There was a faint clicking sound as she adjusted her phone. You've always been strong-willed, she said. And she's always been shielded, I answered. Lorraine didn't like that. She's struggling. I know. Then why not help her quietly? Because quietly became permanently, I thought. Instead, I said, because helping without change isn't help. She inhaled sharply. You're sounding very cold. No, I said. I'm sounding very clear. The conversation ended with polite tension. That was the first wave. The second came through text messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in months. Is it true you made Madison cry in front of the kids? Kids cry when reality hits, I replied. You've changed, one wrote. No, I typed back. I stopped compensating. The narrative was spreading, but something interesting was happening alongside it. Not everyone agreed with Madison. One cousin messaged privately. Honestly, she always orders like someone else is paying. Another wrote, I've covered her tab before too. Patterns are invisible until someone refuses to participate. Wednesday night, Madison sent me a long message. You've turned everyone against me. I read it twice before replying. I didn't say a word publicly. That's worse, she answered. It makes me look guilty. I stared at that. Silence, apparently, was more threatening than argument. You made your own post, I replied, because I had to defend myself. From what? I asked. From you humiliating me. I typed slowly. I didn't humiliate you. I declined to pay. She didn't respond for several minutes. Then, you've always judged me. That accusation landed softer this time. I've always calculated, I typed. Not judged. She called immediately. Why are you like this? She demanded. Like what? So rigid, so structured, so superior. I'm not superior, I said. I'm disciplined. Same thing. No, I said calmly. Discipline is internal, superiority is comparative. She scoffed. Listen to you, corporate robot. Listen to you, I replied evenly, still avoiding the numbers. Silence. You think I don't know we're in trouble? She asked quietly. I think you didn't act like it. You think I wanted this? I think you avoided it. Her breathing shifted. You don't know what it's like, she whispered. What? I asked gently. To feel like you're constantly behind. Behind who? Behind you. The same confession from Sunday resurfaced. I'm not competing, I said softly. You don't have to, she replied. You always win. That stung more than I expected. I'm not winning, I said. I'm planning. She laughed bitterly. You plan like you expect disaster. I plan like I expect reality. She went quiet. I can't sleep, she admitted suddenly. I hadn't expected that. Because of the debt? Because of everything, she said. The SUV, the credit cards, the way people are looking at me. I didn't soften my tone. They're looking because the performance stopped. That's cruel. It's honest. She exhaled slowly. I didn't mean to drag you into the lease, she said. That's not the point, I replied. You didn't think it mattered. She didn't argue. Did you really put that money into Ethan's college fund? She asked suddenly. Yes. How much? $1,247. She laughed weakly. You memorized it. Yes. Of course you did. Numbers anchor me. They always have. I'm not your enemy, I said quietly. You feel like one. Because I stopped absorbing impact. She didn't respond. I'm not fixing this, I continued, but I'm not rooting against you either. There was a long pause. Everyone keeps telling me to ask you for help, she said. And? I don't want to. That surprised me. Why? Because then you'd be right. The honesty startled both of us. I don't need to be right, I said. I need you to be stable. She swallowed audibly. Greg's picking up overtime, she said. We canceled the kids' summer camp. Those were real consequences. Have you called a debt counselor? I asked. No. Why not? Because that makes it official. It already is, I said gently. Silence again. I hate that you're calm, she muttered. Why? Because it makes me feel chaotic. That was the most truthful thing she had said all week. Calm isn't superiority, I said. It's preparation. She didn't reply. Thursday morning, my mother texted. She hasn't eaten much. Guilt tried to creep in, but I shut it down. Has she met with a financial advisor? I replied. You're impossible sometimes, my mother answered. No, I typed. I'm consistent. Friday afternoon, an email notification popped up. From the bank. Reference removal approved. 30 days had shrunk to 5. I forwarded the confirmation to Madison. No comment attached. She responded an hour later. Got it, that was all. Short, clean. No accusation, no sarcasm. Saturday came quietly. No dramatic phone calls, no social media posts. The storm had moved from public spectacle to private reckoning. That evening, Daniel and I sat on the couch after Ethan went to bed. You're holding steady, he observed. I have to, I said. For her? For me, he nodded. You don't sound angry anymore. I'm not, I admitted. What are you? Tired of pretending. He leaned his head back against the cushion. You know what's interesting? He said. What? You didn't destroy anything. I considered that. Madison's SUV was gone. Her credit cards were maxed. Her social media had gone quiet. But I hadn't caused any of that. I had simply stepped aside. I didn't push the domino, I said slowly. I just stopped holding it upright. That night, Madison texted again. We met with a debt advisor today. I stared at the message for a long moment. And? It's worse than I thought. There was no defiance in that sentence, just fatigue. Next step? I typed. Budget restructure, snowball plan, no more dining out. I almost smiled. That sounded familiar. You can do that, I wrote. It's going to take years, she replied. Stability does, I said. 3 dots appeared. Then, I hate that you're right. I didn't respond, because being right was never the goal. Being finished with quiet rescue was. When I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, the house felt balanced. Not because everything was fixed, but because for the first time I wasn't holding anyone else's financial gravity in my hands. And when you let go of weight that was never yours to carry, your spine straightens. Not in arrogance, in relief. Thanksgiving arrived earlier than I expected. Not on the calendar, but emotionally. For years my parents had hosted. Madison arrived fashionably late with an expensive bottle of wine she never paid for. I brought the side dishes and quietly handled whatever gap appeared between expectation and reality. This year, I offered to host. Not as a power move, not as revenge, but because I wanted the environment controlled, predictable, structured. My mother hesitated when I suggested it. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" she asked. "Yes," I said simply. "What about your sister?" "She's invited," I replied, "under the same rules as everyone else." There it was again, rules. That word used to irritate Madison. It used to sound accusatory, now it sounded necessary. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Madison called. "We're coming," she said. "I assumed you were," I replied. Her tone was cautious. "What's the plan?" "Dinner at 2. Bring a side if you'd like." "Just a side?" "Yes. No elaborate catering orders, no seafood towers, no expensive wine performance." Silence. "Okay," she said. No sarcasm, no edge. Just okay. That alone told me things were shifting. Thanksgiving morning, I woke before sunrise. Chicago was cold and gray outside the windows. The house quiet. I moved through the kitchen methodically, turkey prepped, potatoes simmering, cranberry sauce chilling. Daniel handled the folding tables in the dining room. Ethan helped arrange place cards, carefully writing names in block letters. "How many seats?" he asked. 12, I said without hesitation. He smiled faintly. "Exactly?" "Exactly." He nodded. At 1:45, the first car pulled into the driveway. My father carried a pie. My mother brought flowers. They looked slightly nervous. "Smells wonderful," my mother said as she stepped inside. "Thank you," I replied. No tension yet. At 2:10, an older gray sedan parked at the curb, not an SUV. Madison stepped out wearing jeans and a simple sweater. No designer coat, no dramatic entrance. Greg followed, carrying a glass dish of green beans. The kids trailed behind them, quieter than usual. For a moment, we just looked at each other. "Hi," she said. "Hi." No air kisses, no performance. She stepped inside. "This is nice," she said softly, glancing around. "Thank you." She placed the green beans on the counter. "I made them," she added quickly. "No catering." "I didn't expect any," I said. She almost smiled. Dinner started smoothly. Conversation stayed light at first. School updates, weather complaints. Greg mentioned overtime hours at work. My father asked about Ethan's soccer season. Madison didn't dominate the table. She listened. That alone felt foreign. Halfway through dinner, my mother reached for the wine bottle. "It's just a house red," I said casually. "Nothing fancy." Madison's eyes flickered briefly toward it. Then she nodded. "That's fine." Fine. The word carried weight. At dessert, my father cleared his throat. "I want to say something," he began. Everyone paused. "We haven't handled things well," he said carefully. "We've tried to protect, and sometimes protecting means preventing people from learning." He glanced at Madison. She didn't interrupt. "We thought helping was love," he continued, "but sometimes helping was avoidance." My mother wiped at her eyes quietly. Madison looked down at her plate. I didn't speak. This wasn't my apology to deliver. Greg squeezed Madison's hand gently. "We're working on it," he said. "Debt plan, budget, no new credit." My father nodded slowly. "That's good." Madison finally looked at me. "I signed up for financial counseling. she said. I know, I replied. How? You told me. She nodded once. I didn't want to, she admitted. It felt humiliating. And now? It feels structured. That word again. Structured. I met her gaze. Structure isn't punishment, I said. It's protection. She held my eyes for a second longer than usual, then looked away. Later, as dishes were being cleared, Madison approached me in the kitchen, alone. You didn't gloat, she said quietly. I had nothing to gloat about. You could have. No, I said. That wouldn't help. She leaned against the counter. I hated you that night, she admitted. I figured. I thought you wanted me to fail. I shook my head. I wanted you to stop pretending, she swallowed. Same difference. It's not, I said gently. There was a long pause. You really moved that money to Ethan's college fund? She asked again. Yes. Greg said that was smart. It was deliberate. She nodded slowly. I would have spent it, she said. I know. There was no accusation in that, just acknowledgement. I'm tired, she whispered suddenly. Of what? Performing. That word again. Performance. I didn't soften my voice. Then stop. She laughed weakly. You make it sound easy. It's not easy, I said. It's simple. She looked confused. Simple and easy aren't the same. She considered that. You think I can fix this? She asked. Yes. Why? Because now it's visible. She stared at the counter. You don't sound angry anymore, she said. I'm not. What are you? Clear. She nodded slowly. I don't know how to be like that. You don't have to be like me, I said. You have to be consistent. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it and sighed. What? I asked. Credit card alert, she muttered. Interest posted. I didn't flinch. Call the counselor, I said. She nodded. Later, as everyone gathered coats, Madison lingered by the door. This was different, she said. Yes. In a good way? Yes. She hesitated. I'm not apologizing, she said. I'm not asking you to. She looked relieved and irritated at the same time. I'm trying, she added. That's enough. She studied my face. You're not rescuing me, she said. No. And you're not cutting me off. No. What is that? Boundary, I said. She exhaled slowly. That word again. Yes. She stepped out into the cold evening air. Greg nodded at me as he passed. Thanks for hosting, he said. You're welcome. After the door closed, Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders. That went better than expected, he murmured. Yes, I agreed. Not perfect, but honest. Ethan wandered into the kitchen. Aunt Madison was quiet, he observed. Yes. Is that good? Sometimes, I said. He nodded thoughtfully. Boundaries? He declared again. I smiled. Yes, boundaries. Later that night, after the house was quiet and the leftovers packed away, I sat alone at the kitchen table. No raised voices, no emergency transfers, no flashing police lights, just stillness. The steakhouse had been loud, public, explosive. This was quiet, private, stabilizing. I realized something then. Revenge is loud, correction is quiet. And what happened at that steakhouse wasn't revenge. It was correction, the first visible one. Thanksgiving ended without drama, without a scene, without a bill landing like a bomb. And for the first time in years, family dinner didn't feel like a negotiation. It felt like gravity had finally settled where it belonged. The real test didn't come at Thanksgiving. It came 3 weeks later, in a parking lot outside a discount furniture warehouse on the edge of the city. I wasn't planning to be there. I had just finished a vendor audit across town and decided to cut through an industrial side road to avoid traffic. The lot was half full, rows of mismatched couches and scratched dining tables visible through dusty windows. And there she was. Madison stood beside the gray sedan, Trunk open, arguing softly with Greg, while a store employee hovered nearby with a dolly. I almost kept driving. Almost. But something made me slow down. Not curiosity, not superiority, just recognition. This wasn't the steakhouse version of my sister. No heels, no leather bag, no air of performance. She was wearing sneakers and a worn coat, holding a tape measure in one hand. I parked a few spaces away. For a moment, I sat inside my car, debating. Then I stepped out. She saw me almost immediately. The flicker in her eyes wasn't anger this time, it was embarrassment. "Hey," I said simply. "Hey," she replied. Greg nodded politely. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Shortcut," I said. "You?" She gestured toward the warehouse. "Dining table." I glanced inside. Mismatched inventory. Discount tags taped crookedly to wood that had seen better days. "Our old one was leased," she added quickly. "Turns out that wasn't a great idea." I didn't react. Leased furniture. Of course it was. "Return policy?" I asked. 30 days, she said. "Cash only." That sentence told me more about her current reality than any Facebook post ever had. The store employee cleared his throat. "You want the oak one or the laminate?" he asked. Madison looked at Greg. Greg looked at the price tags. Laminate was half the cost. Oak looked better. She hesitated. That hesitation used to be followed by a glance in my direction, a silent calculation of whether I'd absorb the difference. This time, she didn't look at me. "Laminate," she said. Greg nodded. The employee wheeled it toward the register. I leaned against my car casually. "How's the plan going?" I asked. She exhaled slowly. "Budget's brutal." "Specific?" "No eating out, no Amazon, no new clothes, no vacations." I waited. "Credit cards frozen," she added. "Greg cut them up." That surprised me. "You let him?" I asked. She gave a faint half-smile. "I asked him to." Progress doesn't announce itself loudly. It shows up in small, uncomfortable decisions. The employee returned with paperwork. "Total is $286, he said. Madison pulled out a debit card. I watched carefully. No glance at me. No subtle expectation. The card processed. Approved. She exhaled. Not dramatic. Just steady. "That felt different," she said quietly once the employee walked away. "What did?" I asked, paying without wondering if it would bounce. I nodded. "That's stability." She studied the laminate table being loaded into the trunk. "It's not glamorous," she muttered. "It's yours," I said. She didn't argue. Greg secured the trunk and looked at me. "Thanks for not making it weird," he said. "I'm not here to supervise," I replied. Madison shot him a look. "She thinks you are," he teased gently. She rolled her eyes but didn't deny it. "Old habits," she admitted. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. "You going to tell Mom you saw me here?" she asked suddenly. "No." "Why not?" "It's not a secret." She nodded slowly. "I used to hate that you always seemed calm," she said. "You've said that before." "I thought it meant you didn't feel anything." "That's not what calm is," I replied. "What is it?" "Preparation." She considered that. "I never prepared," she said. "I know. And you never stopped me." That one landed. "I thought you'd learn on your own," I admitted. She snorted softly. "Clearly not." We both glanced at the trunk again. "Laminate won't last forever," she said. "It doesn't have to," I replied. She looked at me. "Are you always this steady?" "No," I said honestly. "I just don't show the wobble." That surprised her. "You wobble?" "Yes." "When?" "The night at the steakhouse," I said. "When Ethan asked where he was supposed to sit." Her face tightened. "I didn't think about that," she whispered. "I know." Silence stretched between us, not hostile, just heavy. "I'm sorry about that part," she said finally. It wasn't a full apology, but it was specific, and specific matters. "Thank you," I said. She nodded once. Greg opened the car door. "We should go," he said gently. Madison lingered a second longer. I don't want to need you, she said quietly. I don't want you to, I replied. She studied my face like she was searching for sarcasm. There wasn't any. I'll call you, she said. For what? I don't know, she admitted. Something normal. I almost smiled. Okay. They drove away slowly, the laminate table barely fitting inside the sedan. I stood there for a moment longer, not triumphant, not vindicated, just observant. That afternoon she texted, table fits, barely. Good, I replied. Then another message. First time I bought something without wondering if you'd bail me out. I stared at that one. And? Scary, but also solid. That word again. Not glamorous, not flashy, solid. That night, Daniel listened as I told him about the warehouse. You didn't offer to upgrade it? He asked lightly. No. Did you want to? I thought about that. Yes, I admitted. Why didn't you? Because upgrading it would delay the lesson. He nodded slowly. You're not punishing her. No. You're letting her feel weight. Yes. Weight isn't cruelty. It's consequence. Later that week, Madison called again. I almost ordered takeout tonight, she confessed. What stopped you? I asked. I imagined the steakhouse receipt. I almost laughed. Trauma can be educational, I said. She groaned. Don't turn it into a TED Talk. I smiled despite myself. Fine. Do you think people still talk about it? She asked suddenly. Yes, I said honestly. She winced. But they'll stop, I added. When? When there's nothing new to say. She was quiet. So consistency is the cure? She asked. Yes. Silence. I hate that you're right, she muttered again. I didn't respond, because this wasn't about being right. It was about not being needed. Friday evening, my father called. She seems different, he said carefully. Yes. She didn't ask us for money this week. That's good. He paused. I think we made it too easy. Yes. He sighed. I don't know how to help now. Support without rescuing, I said. He didn't respond immediately. That's hard. Yes. Harder than writing a check. Yes. The truth settled between us. That night, I opened Ethan's college fund again. Small growth, slow accumulation, nothing dramatic, just upward. I closed the laptop and sat back. At the warehouse parking lot, I hadn't felt powerful. I had felt detached. And that detachment wasn't cruelty. It was separation. When you stop carrying someone else's financial gravity, you notice how much energy you regain. Energy for your child, for your marriage, for yourself. The laminate table probably wasn't impressive, but it was paid for, in full, without me. And that mattered more than oak ever would. The rumor didn't die quietly. It resurfaced in the most inconvenient place possible. Ethan's school fundraiser gala in early spring. The event was held in the gymnasium, decorated with white string lights and silent auction tables arranged in neat rows. Parents in semi-formal attire mingled with paper wine cups and bidding sheets clipped to clipboards. I almost didn't attend. But Ethan had worked on a robotics project that was being displayed near the stage, and I wasn't going to miss that. Daniel walked beside me as we entered. You good? He asked quietly. Always, I said. That wasn't entirely true. The moment we stepped inside, I felt eyes flick toward us. Recognition. Whispers. Not malicious exactly, just curious. The steakhouse story had traveled further than I anticipated. I kept my posture steady. Control is contagious. As we approached Ethan's display table, I saw Madison standing at the check-in desk. Volunteering. She was wearing a simple black cardigan and jeans, hair pulled back. No dramatic jewelry, no oversized bag. She saw me. There was a flicker, an old instinct to perform, but it faded quickly. Hi, she said. Hi. You look official, she added, glancing at my blazer. It's a fundraiser. She gave a small nod. Right. A woman standing beside her turned and smiled at me. You're Avery, right? She asked. Yes. I heard about that birthday dinner, she said lightly. Separate checks, right? The word landed softly but clearly. Separate checks. Madison's shoulders tensed. The room seemed to tilt for a second. I didn't flinch. Yes, I said calmly. Separate checks. The woman laughed awkwardly. Well, bold move. Necessary, I replied. She nodded and drifted away. Madison kept her eyes on the sign-in sheet. I'm sorry, she muttered. For what? For that. You didn't say it. She exhaled slowly. I know. A father from Ethan's soccer team approached. Hey, Avery, he said. Your son's project is impressive. Thank you. He hesitated. Look, I don't know what happened with your sister, but I respect what you did. Madison heard that. Her hand paused mid-signature. Respect? She echoed quietly once he walked away. Yes, she swallowed. I thought everyone thought you were cruel. Some probably do, I said. And that doesn't bother you? It used to. She finally looked at me directly. What changed? I stopped trying to control the narrative. That unsettled her more than I expected. Across the room, Ethan was explaining his robotics project with animated excitement. I watched him gesture toward wires and motors, completely unaware of adult reputations hovering nearby. That's what matters, I said softly. Madison followed my gaze. He looks confident, she observed. He is. You didn't shield him from what happened? No. Why? Because shielding teaches fragility. She frowned slightly. I thought protection was good. It is, I said. But overprotection builds illusion. Her jaw tightened subtly. She understood that better now. Halfway through the evening, the school principal approached the microphone to thank volunteers. And a special thanks to Madison Morgan for coordinating check-in tonight, he said. Applause rippled politely. Madison blinked in surprise. She hadn't expected public acknowledgement. It wasn't glamorous, but it was earned. I clapped. She glanced at me again, confused by the lack of sarcasm. Later, while browsing silent auction items, a woman leaned toward me. She handled that dinner situation badly, she whispered conspiratorially. I heard she tried to make you pay. Yes, I said evenly. I can't imagine doing that to my sister. People do strange things under pressure, I replied. The woman nodded. Well, you stood your ground. Good for you. She walked away. Madison was watching from across the table. She approached cautiously. They think I'm irresponsible, she said. Some do. And you're fine with that? I'm fine with accuracy. She let out a short breath. That's brutal. No, I said. It's stable. She folded her arms loosely. I'm not used to people not defending me. I'm not attacking you. That's worse, she said quietly. I studied her for a moment. You want me to contradict them? I don't know, she admitted. Then figure out why. She looked genuinely puzzled. I thought you'd enjoy this. Enjoy what? Being right, I shook my head. This isn't about right. It's about pattern. She glanced at Ethan again. He doesn't look embarrassed, she said. He's not. Why? Because he saw consistency. That word again. Consistency. It's boring. It's repetitive. It's powerful. A group of parents gathered near the dessert table. One of them called out lightly, Hey, Avery, no surprise guests tonight, right? Laughter. Soft. Not cruel. Just referencing the story. Madison stiffened again. I raised an eyebrow slightly. 12 seats, I said calmly. Always. More laughter. The joke passed. It didn't linger. That was the moment I realized something important. The story had become anecdote, not scandal, and anecdotes fade when there's no new chaos to fuel them. After the fundraiser wrapped, Madison lingered near the exit. Do you think this will follow me forever? She asked. No. When does it stop? When there's a longer record of stability than instability. She processed that slowly. So I just keep showing up? Yes. And don't order lobster? I almost smiled. Especially don't order lobster. She huffed a faint laugh. I really thought you'd cave that night, she admitted. I know. You always did. Yes, she hesitated. Why didn't you this time? I thought about Ethan's face again, because he deserved better. Because I needed him to see me not bend, I said finally. She nodded once. That makes sense. We walked toward the parking lot together. Not side by side exactly, but not opposed. People think I lost that night, she said suddenly. You did, I replied gently. She stopped walking. That's honest. Yes. And you think that's good? Yes. She stared at the asphalt for a moment. I've never lost publicly before, she admitted. That's why it mattered. She absorbed that. Do you ever feel like you're constantly bracing? She asked. Yes. For what? For other people's impact. And you're not now? No. She looked at me with something like envy. That must feel light. It feels quiet, I corrected. Greg pulled the sedan around. She opened the door, then paused. I didn't correct them, she said quietly. Who? The parents. About what? The story. I waited. I just said I learned a lot that night. I nodded. That's accurate. She closed the door and drove away. In the car, Daniel glanced at me. That went better than I expected, he said. Yes. She didn't explode. No. She didn't deflect. No. He smiled faintly. That's growth. Yes. Later that evening, I sat at the kitchen island while Ethan finished homework. Mom? He asked. Yes? Why do people keep mentioning my birthday? I didn't sugarcoat it. Because it was loud. Was it bad? It was uncomfortable. Are you mad about it? No. Is Aunt Madison? She was. And now? She's learning. He nodded thoughtfully. Like when I forget homework and have to fix it myself? Exactly, he smiled. Boundaries, he said again. Yes. That word no longer felt defensive. It felt foundational. Before bed, I checked my email. A short message from Madison. Thanks for not adding fuel tonight. I stared at it, then replied. Thanks for not lighting it. She responded almost instantly. I'm trying. I believed her. Because growth doesn't arrive with fanfare. It shows up in restraint, in quiet check-in desks instead of loud restaurant tables, in laminate dining tables instead of leased oak, in volunteering instead of performing. The rumor wasn't dead, but it wasn't alive either. It was fading, because without repetition, stories lose oxygen, and without oxygen, drama suffocates. That night, I slept easily, not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was spiraling. And for the first time in a long time, stability felt contagious. 6 months after the steakhouse, Madison showed up at my front door holding a banker's box. Not a casserole, not a gift bag, a cardboard box filled with paperwork. It was a Tuesday evening. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner when the doorbell rang. Ethan was upstairs finishing a math worksheet. Daniel was in the living room, half watching a news segment about rising interest rates. I opened the door. She looked different again, not defeated, focused. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. She carried the box to the kitchen island and set it down like it weighed more than paper. What's that? I asked. My life, she said flatly. I didn't laugh. She opened the lid. Credit card statements, bank printouts, budget worksheets, a yellow legal pad filled with handwritten calculations. You said consistency cures reputation, she began, but numbers cure denial. I leaned against the counter. Okay, I need you to look at this, she said. That sounds like supervision. It's accountability, she corrected. I studied her face. No sarcasm, no manipulation, just determination. Daniel stepped into the kitchen quietly and gave me a questioning look. I nodded once. He stayed, leaning against the doorway. Madison spread out the statements in organized stacks. 6 credit cards, she said. All frozen. 2 are now under hardship programs. 1 we settled. You settled? I asked. Yes. For how much? 40%. I blinked. Greg negotiated, she added. Turns out collection agencies don't like drawn-out court costs. That surprised me. You hired an attorney? No, she said. We Googled. I almost smiled. Snowball plan? I asked. Yes. Emergency fund? 500 so far. That wasn't much, but it was something. She flipped open the legal pad. Monthly income after overtime, she said. Subtract mortgage, utilities, food, gas, debt payments, there's no margin. Then cut deeper, I said. She bristled slightly. We already cut everything. Then increase income. She stared at me. Like what? What skills do you have? I used to do event marketing. Use it, she hesitated. Freelance? Yes. She looked overwhelmed. I'm already tired. I know. Silence. I didn't come here for criticism, she said quietly. I'm not criticizing, I replied. I'm diagnosing. She exhaled slowly. You really do treat everything like logistics. Yes. And that works for you. Yes. She rubbed her forehead. I don't know how to think like that. You don't have to think like me, I said. You just have to stop thinking like you did. That stung. I saw it. But she didn't shut down. Instead, she nodded once. Okay. Daniel stepped forward slightly. You want coffee? He asked her. She blinked, surprised. Sure. He poured 3 cups. She took hers carefully. I've never sat at this counter without something blowing up, she said quietly. That's new, I replied. She flipped to another page. I tracked every dollar for 3 months, she said. Every coffee, every subscription, every fee. And? It was humiliating. Yes, I said, but it was clear. Clarity again. She pointed to a highlighted section. Dining out was insane. I didn't comment. Wine alone, she added, shaking her head. Silence settled. Then she looked up at me. I don't want to live like that anymore. That was different from I don't want to look like that. It was internal, not external. What do you want? I asked. Stability, she said immediately. The word came without hesitation. Then act like someone who values it, I replied. She stared at the stack of papers. I used to measure my life by appearance, she said slowly. Now I measure it by balances. That's progress, she swallowed. I used to resent you, she said. I know. I thought you were judging me. I wasn't. I know that now. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she asked something unexpected. Did you ever feel tempted to bail me out? Yes, I said honestly. When? That night at the restaurant, when the police showed up. She winced. God. I almost reached for my card, I admitted. Why didn't you? Because Ethan was watching. She closed her eyes briefly. I hate that that's what made it stick. It wasn't just him, I said. It was me. She studied me carefully. You look calmer, she observed. I am. Because I'm not draining you? Yes, she nodded. That's fair. Greg texted her. She glanced at the screen. Kids are doing homework, she said. We told them the truth. About what? The debt. I raised an eyebrow. How'd that go? Awkward, she said, but they didn't panic. Kids handle reality better than adults, I replied. She gave a faint smile. Apparently. She closed the banker's box halfway. Mom asked if you're still mad, she said. I'm not mad. What are you? Resolved. She considered that. Is that permanent? Yes. She nodded slowly. That's scary. Only if you plan to cross it again. She didn't argue. Instead, she asked something I didn't expect. Do you think we'll ever be close? The question felt fragile. Close doesn't mean merged, I said carefully. What does it mean? Honest. She absorbed that. We've never really been honest, she admitted. No. Why? Because honesty is uncomfortable. She nodded once. I'm uncomfortable now, she said. Good. She rolled her eyes slightly. Of course you'd say that. I smiled faintly. It means you're not performing. She looked around the kitchen. Your house feels steady, she said quietly. It is. Mine feels like triage. Triage becomes routine, I replied. She took a long sip of coffee. I don't want to compete with you anymore, she said. You never had to. I know that now. Silence settled again. She closed the banker's box fully this time. I didn't come for money, she said. I know. I came because I didn't want to hide. That mattered more than she realized. You don't have to hide, I said. She nodded. Thank you. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't theatrical. It was measured. As she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. You're not my safety net anymore, she said. No. But you're not my enemy. No. She gave a small nod. That's better. After she left, Daniel exhaled slowly. That was different, he said. Yes. She didn't try to manipulate. No. She asked for accountability. Yes. He smiled faintly. That's growth. I walked back to the kitchen island and touched the edge where the banker's box had rested. For years, our conversations had revolved around crisis. Now they revolved around calculation, not glamorous, not loud, just structural. Later that night, I checked Ethan's college fund again. The number had grown slightly. Compound interest doesn't shout. It accumulates. Like discipline, like stability, like boundaries. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Signed up for a freelance event contract. Small one, but paid up front. I stared at the message. That's good, I replied. She sent another. It's not champagne. I smiled. Beer budget, I typed. She responded with a simple, solid. I set the phone down and turned off the kitchen lights. 6 months ago, the story was about a restaurant and a receipt. Now it was about balance sheets and bankers' boxes. Not revenge, correction. And correction, when accepted, doesn't fracture a family. It reshapes it. Quietly. The first real test of her consistency didn't come from a bill. It came from temptation. Late March in Chicago brings that strange, deceptive warmth that makes you think winter is over when it isn't. Madison called me on a Thursday afternoon sounding unusually bright. Guess what? She said. That tone worries me, I replied. I got offered a contract, a real one. For what? Corporate event coordination, downtown hotel, 2-day conference. They need someone to handle vendor logistics. I smiled faintly despite myself. Vendor logistics? Yes, she said. Apparently I'm good at organizing chaos. Apparently. They're paying $5,000. That caught my attention. Gross or net? She paused. Gross. Taxes? I know. Upfront deposit? Half. That was better. And expenses? I asked. Covered. There was a small silence. Okay, I said. That sounds solid. It is, she replied. But there it was. But what? They want me to host a preview dinner for the executive team next week. I closed my eyes briefly. And? They're not covering that part. How much? She hesitated. Probably around $2,000. Madison. I know, she said quickly. But it's networking. It's optics. Optics. That word used to justify everything. Are you fronting it personally? I asked. Yes. With what margin? Silence. 0, she admitted. I leaned back in my chair at my office desk. You just crawled out of a $60,000 hole, I said, and your first instinct is to dig again. It's an investment, she insisted. Is it? I asked calmly. It could lead to more contracts. Could. She exhaled sharply. You're going to say no. I'm going to ask you math. She went quiet. Okay, she said reluctantly. 5,000 gross, I said. After taxes? Maybe 3,800. Minus 2,000 dinner? 1,800. Minus overhead? 1,400. Minus your time? Silence. It's visibility, she argued weakly. Visibility doesn't pay interest, I said. She didn't respond immediately. I don't want to look small, she whispered. That again. Who defines small? I asked. They're executives. And you're a contractor. That sounds lesser. No, I replied. It sounds accurate. Silence. Why do you always cut the romance out of things? She asked. Because romance is expensive. She laughed despite herself. You're impossible. I'm consistent. She grew quiet. I almost booked the restaurant already, she admitted. With what card? My debit. Margin? None. I stood and walked to the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. Madison, I said carefully, are you building a business or rebuilding a performance? She didn't answer for a long time. I don't know, she finally said. That's the problem. She sighed. I don't want to miss the opportunity. Opportunity doesn't require self-sabotage, I said. Silence stretched. I hate that I still think like that, she whispered. That's habit, I replied. How do I stop? Pause, I said. Before spending. I paused, she protested. I called you. That was true. You paused, I agreed. Good, she exhaled shakily. What would you do? Negotiate, I said. For what? For partial coverage. Or host something within your margin. They'll think I'm cheap. Or disciplined. She scoffed softly. You really think executives respect discipline? Yes. More than Lobster? Yes. Silence again. I almost ordered Lobster, she muttered. I smiled faintly. Of course you did. Why does that feel like validation to me? She asked quietly. Because it used to signal success, I replied. And now? It signals debt. She groaned. This is exhausting. Yes, I said. Growth is. There was a long pause. I'm going to call them, she said finally. Now? Yes. Good. Stay on the phone? No. She blinked through the silence. You don't want to listen? No, I said gently. You don't need a supervisor. She was quiet. Okay, she said. She hung up. I stood at the window for several seconds longer than necessary. It would have been easier to say, I'll cover the dinner. Just this once. But just this once was the phrase that had built a decade of instability. An hour later, my phone buzzed. They agreed to cover half, she texted. I smiled. And? And I'm hosting it at a mid-range spot. No seafood towers. Good, I replied. There was another message. I almost said yes to the full thing. I know, I typed. She sent a final one. This feels different. How? Like I'm choosing not to impress. I stared at that. That's growth, I wrote. That evening, Daniel noticed the shift in my mood. She didn't blow it? He asked. No. She negotiated? Yes. He smiled. That's new. Yes. Later that week, Madison called again. The dinner's tomorrow, she said. Nervous? Yes. About what? That they'll judge. They might. Helpful. Judgment isn't fatal, I said. Embarrassment feels like it. It isn't. She was quiet. You really didn't reach for your card that night? She asked suddenly. At the steakhouse? Yes. I almost did. She inhaled sharply. What stopped you? The idea that if I paid, nothing would change. She was silent for several seconds. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not paying. The simplicity of that surprised me. You're welcome, I replied. The next evening she sent a photo. A modest private room at a hotel restaurant. Clean, professional, no excess. Looks normal, she wrote. Normal is stable, I replied. She didn't respond. An hour later, another message. It went well. They didn't blink at the venue. Good. They signed a follow-up contract. For how much? $7,000. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. That's solid. She sent one more message. No lobster. I laughed out loud. That night, as I sat at the kitchen island reviewing quarterly reports, I realized something. The test had shifted. It wasn't about refusing to pay anymore. It was about refusing to enable risk disguised as opportunity. And she had passed. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Before bed, Ethan padded into the kitchen. "Mom." "Yes?" "Is Aunt Madison coming to my soccer game Saturday?" "I think so." "Is she going to be loud?" "Probably less loud than before." He nodded thoughtfully. "Good." "Why?" "Because it's distracting." I smiled. Boundaries ripple. They don't just protect finances, they protect focus. As I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, my phone buzzed one last time, from Madison. "I didn't need you tonight." I stared at that sentence for a long moment. "I know," I typed back, and I didn't feel left out. I felt relieved. Because when someone learns to stand without your scaffolding, you don't lose importance. You gain distance. And distance, I was learning, is where strength multiplies. Not in dramatic confrontations, but in quiet negotiations where no one reaches for someone else's wallet. Especially not mine. The first real apology didn't happen in a restaurant or over a spreadsheet. It happened in my parents' driveway on a Sunday afternoon, while Ethan kicked a soccer ball against the garage door. The sky was pale blue, early summer creeping into Chicago. The air felt lighter than it had in months. Madison pulled up in the gray sedan, now familiar, and parked carefully along the curb instead of angling dramatically into the driveway like she used to with the SUV. Small shifts. Greg stepped out first, carrying a cooler. Madison followed, holding a simple bouquet of grocery store flowers. Not extravagant, not staged, just normal. "Hi," she said. "Hi." My mother came out of the house, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. My father followed, slower these days, but steady. We gathered in the driveway for a moment, awkward and ordinary. Ethan ran over, out of breath. "Aunt Madison!" he shouted. She crouched and hugged him tightly. "Hey, superstar!" she said. No flashy gift, no loud announcement, just presence. Later, after lunch, while Ethan and Greg tossed the soccer ball back and forth, Madison approached me near the side yard. "I need to say something," she said quietly. I nodded once. She didn't look dramatic. She looked deliberate. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were clear, not rushed, not attached to excuses. "For what?" I asked gently. "For the steakhouse, for the assumption, for all of it." I didn't rush to respond. Apologies deserve silence before acceptance. "I didn't think," she continued. "I didn't think about Ethan's chair. I didn't think about the bill. I didn't think about you." She swallowed. "I thought about image." The honesty landed heavier than the apology. "I know," I said. She nodded. "And I'm sorry I dragged you into my mess for years." I studied her face. No deflection, no hidden hook, just clarity. "I accept that," I said finally. She exhaled slowly, almost shakily. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it." She blinked. "You're not going to dissect it?" "No." You're not going to remind me what I did?" "I don't need to." Silence stretched between us. "That feels anticlimactic," she muttered. "Growth usually is." She laughed softly. "I deserve that." We stood there for a moment, watching Ethan attempt a dramatic kick and miss completely. "You know what scared me most?" she asked suddenly. "What?" "That you didn't yell." I looked at her. "You were calm," she continued. "That was worse." "Why?" "Because it meant you weren't reacting. You were deciding." I didn't deny it. "I was done reacting," I said. She nodded slowly. "I used to think being dramatic meant being strong. It meant being loud. And you were quiet." "Yes." "And it worked." "It did." She hesitated. "Do you hate me?" "No." "Did you?" "No." She frowned slightly. "You weren't angry?" "I was tired," I said. That answer seemed to settle something in her. "I was angry," she admitted. "At you, at the bill, at the police, at Greg, at the kids." She paused. "But mostly at myself." That didn't surprise me. "When the SUV got repossessed," she continued, "I sat on the curb and thought about the steakhouse." I didn't interrupt. I realized you weren't humiliating me, she said. You were exposing me. Yes. And exposure felt cruel. It felt necessary, I replied. She nodded slowly. I know that now. Across the yard, my father laughed at something Ethan said. The sound carried easily. I always thought you were lucky, she said quietly. With what? With stability, with discipline, with Daniel. I chose those, I replied. I know. She wrapped her arms around herself briefly. I chose chaos, she admitted. You chose impulse, I corrected gently. Same thing. Not exactly. She tilted her head slightly. You still won't call it chaos? No. Why? Because chaos implies you didn't have control. She stared at me. You think I did? Yes. She looked down at the grass. That's harsher than chaos. It's honest. She absorbed that slowly. I didn't think you saw me that clearly, she said. I always did. Then why didn't you say something sooner? I did, I said. She thought about that. You did, she admitted. I just didn't listen. No. She shifted her weight. Do you ever think about that night? She asked. Yes. Does it still make you angry? No. What does it make you feel? Resolved. She smiled faintly. You love that word. Yes. It's annoying. I know. We both watched Ethan score an accidental goal off the garage door and cheer like he'd won a championship. He doesn't flinch around me, she said quietly. No. Why? Because you haven't given him a reason to. She swallowed. I was afraid he'd remember the screaming. He probably does, I said gently. She winced. But he also remembers you showing up. Her eyes flicked up to mine. That matters? Yes. She looked almost relieved. I thought one bad night defined everything. Only if it repeats. She nodded slowly. It won't, she said firmly. I believed her. That surprised me. You know, she said after a moment, when the police showed up, I thought you were ruining my life. And now? Now I think you might have saved it. I didn't respond. Some realizations don't need commentary. She glanced toward the house. Mom still thinks you were harsh. She would. But she stopped defending me. That's growth, too, she nodded. I used to rely on that. I know. And I used to rely on you. I know. Silence settled again. Not heavy, just steady. I don't want to compete with you anymore, she said softly. You never had to. I know, and I don't want to be rescued. I won't, she gave a small, almost shy smile. That's weirdly comforting. It should be. She took a breath. I'm going to mess up again, she admitted. Probably. You won't fix it. No. You won't shame me either. No, she nodded once. Okay. Across the yard, Ethan waved at us. Aunt Madison, watch this. She jogged over to him. No hesitation, no dramatic flourish, just presence. I stood there watching them for a moment longer. 10 months ago, she would have tried to buy his attention. Now she earned it. Daniel walked up beside me. That looked solid, he said quietly. Yes. She apologized? Yes. Did it feel real? Yes. He nodded slowly. You're not holding anything anymore, are you? No. He smiled faintly. That's new. Yes, it was. As the sun dipped lower and the backyard filled with golden light, I realized something unexpected. I didn't feel victorious. I felt balanced. The steakhouse had been explosive. This was quiet, and quiet lasts longer. Before Madison left that evening, she paused at the driveway. Reservation is for 12, she said softly. I looked at her. She smiled faintly. Lesson learned. Good, I replied. She got into the sedan and drove away without revving the engine. No spectacle, no drama, just forward motion. And that, more than any apology, told me the correction had worked. The call came at 11:42 on a Wednesday night. I was half asleep, the house quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Daniel stirred beside me as my phone vibrated on the nightstand. Madison. My pulse didn't spike the way it used to. That was the first thing I noticed. I answered. Hey, I said, voice steady. There was no screaming, no panic, just breathing. Are you awake? She asked quietly. I am now. Sorry. What's going on? Silence stretched for a few seconds. Greg lost his overtime. I sat up slightly against the headboard. For how long? Indefinite. Reason? Company cutbacks. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. Okay. That single word seemed to surprise her. Okay? She repeated. Yes, okay. She exhaled sharply. I don't have margin for this. I know. There was a faint tremor in her voice. We were finally getting ahead, she said. Finally. Are you behind on anything yet? No. Good. Silence again. I almost asked Dad for money, she admitted. Did you? No. Good. She laughed weakly. You're very predictable. Yes. I wanted to ask you, she said. I figured. And? You didn't. No. Why? I imagined the steakhouse. I leaned back against the headboard. What about it? The way you didn't flinch. That again. That wasn't about not flinching, I said. It was about not stepping in. I know. Another silence. So what do we do? She asked finally. We. That word used to mean shared financial rescue. Now it meant shared conversation. You revise the plan, I said. How? Start with expenses. I already cut everything. Cut again, she groaned softly. There's nothing left. Subscriptions? Gone. Streaming? 1. Cell plan? Basic. Insurance? Shopped. Food? Already strict. Then income, I said. I can't just manifest money. No, I replied calmly. But you can increase output. How? More contracts. It's not that simple. No, I agreed. It's not. Silence. I'm scared, she admitted. That was new. I know, I said. I hate this feeling. What feeling? That I'm one unexpected expense away from drowning again. I closed my eyes for a moment. That feeling is honest, I said. It's exhausting. Yes, but you're not drowning, I added. Not yet. You're aware. She didn't respond immediately. I used to numb this with spending, she whispered. I know. Wine, shopping, dinners. I know. I don't have that option now. No. And that's loud. What is? The anxiety. That made sense. When you remove distraction, you hear reality more clearly. What are your numbers right now? I asked. She sighed. Emergency fund is at $1,200. Good. Debt still around $42,000. Okay. Mortgage current. Good. She exhaled again. I don't want to ask you for money. I know. I don't want to ask anyone. Good. Stop saying good, she muttered. I almost smiled. You want reassurance or structure? I asked. Both. You'll get structure, I said. She groaned softly. Of course. Map worst case scenario, I continued. I hate worst case. Do it anyway. Silence. Okay, she said reluctantly. If Greg's income drops by 20%, what shifts first? Extra debt payments. Good. What else? Freelance ramp up. How? Cold emails. Do it. I already did some. More. She sighed again. You make it sound like a military plan. It is. Life shouldn't feel like war. It shouldn't feel like denial either. That quieted her. I almost called Dad, she said again. And? I pictured Mom crying. That's not helpful, I said. No. And I pictured you saying no. I would have. I know. Silence. I don't want to resent you, she said suddenly. You won't. How do you know? Because I'm not your solution. She didn't argue. I hate how calm you are, she whispered. I'm not calm, I said. You sound calm. I'm deliberate. That's worse. Why? Because it means you're not reacting. That's the point. Silence. I thought stability meant comfort, she said slowly. It means preparation. You keep saying that. Because it's true. She was quiet for a long moment. Greg's asleep, she said finally. Why are you up? I couldn't stop calculating. That's good. No, it's not. It is, I said. It means you're engaged. I feel like I'm bracing. Yes. For what? For impact. That's exhausting. Yes. But that's what you've always done, isn't it? She asked. I paused. Yes. And you don't look tired. I am, I admitted. But I don't look it. She went silent again. I used to think you were lucky, she said softly. With what? With not worrying. I almost laughed. I worry constantly. Then how do you function? I plan. Silence. That's not romantic, she muttered. No. But it's solid. Yes. The word again. Solid. Okay, she said finally. Tomorrow I'll rework the spreadsheet. Good. Stop, I smiled faintly. You called me, I reminded her. I know. And I didn't give you money. No. And you're still on the phone. Yes. That's progress. She was quiet. You know what's weird? She asked. What? I don't feel abandoned. That's because you're not. You're not rescuing me. No. But you're not walking away. No. She let that sit. That's new. Yes. There was a long pause. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not making this about the steakhouse. It's not about the steakhouse. It feels like it could have been. It's about now. Silence. I'm going to be okay, she said suddenly. Yes. You sound sure. I am. Why? Because you're thinking before spending. She laughed softly. That's the bar? Yes, she exhaled. Okay. We stayed on the phone a few minutes longer, not talking much, just breathing. When she finally hung up, the house was silent again. Daniel shifted beside me. Everything okay? He murmured. Yes. She asking for money? No. He nodded sleepily. That's good. Yes, I whispered. Good. Not dramatic, not glamorous, just good. The next morning I woke up tired but steady. There was no emergency transfer, no frantic Venmo request, just a text from Madison, spreadsheet updated, sending 5 more cold emails today. I stared at it for a moment, then replied, solid. She sent back a single thumbs-up emoji, simple, contained, not champagne, not crisis, just effort. And effort, I was learning, is louder than panic when it's consistent. That night, as I closed my laptop after reviewing Ethan's 529 account, still growing slowly, steadily, I realized something. The real shift wasn't that she stopped spending recklessly. It was that she stopped looking for someone else to absorb the hit. And when that changes, everything changes. Not in fireworks, in quiet. And quiet is sustainable. The SUV came back into the story the day the leasing company called me by mistake. It was a Friday afternoon. I was finishing up a vendor contract review when my office line lit up with an unfamiliar number. This is Avery Morgan, I answered. Ms. Morgan, we're calling regarding the outstanding balance on the vehicle previously registered under Madison Morgan and Gregory Hale. My grip on the receiver tightened slightly. I'm not financially responsible for that vehicle, I said evenly. We're aware, the woman replied. Your name was previously listed as a secondary contact. We're updating records following the repossession auction. Auction. So it had gone that far. I was removed from that file weeks ago, I said. Yes, she confirmed. This is simply procedural. The vehicle sold at auction below remaining balance. How much below? I asked before I could stop myself. There was a brief pause as she clicked through screens. 12,000. I closed my eyes briefly. Thank you, I said calmly, and hung up. I didn't call Madison immediately. That would have been the old instinct. Jump in, warn her, brace. Instead, I waited. She texted an hour later. Did they call you? Yes. Silence. Then, we knew it would sell low. How much? I typed. 12,000. So she knew. And? We're negotiating a settlement. Good, I replied. There was a longer pause this time. I keep thinking about that steakhouse bill, she wrote. In what way? If you'd paid that night, I would have still believed someone would absorb the SUV. I read that twice. Probably, I answered. She sent another message. It's humbling to realize how far denial stretches. Yes. I waited for accusation. It didn't come. Instead, another text. Greg said something last night. What? He said we were living like inheritance was guaranteed. That hit. There was no inheritance, just assumptions. What did you say? I asked. I said we were living like Avery was inheritance. The honesty startled me. And now, I typed, now we're living like no one is. I leaned back in my office chair and let that settle. That was the shift. For years, she had lived as if rescue was predictable. Now, unpredictability was reality. That evening, she called. We're meeting with the leasing company Monday, she said. Okay. They offered a payment plan. Terms? 4 years. Interest? Low. Can you manage it? Yes. I paused. Then do it. You're not going to analyze it? You already did. She exhaled softly. That feels strange. What does? Making a decision without expecting you to dissect it. I almost smiled. You can handle it. Can I? Yes. She went quiet. I'm tired of proving you right, she muttered. You're not proving me right, I said. You're proving yourself stable. She let that sit. Monday came and went without drama. No frantic messages, no requests. Just a short text at 5:30 p.m. settlement signed. Payment manageable. Good, I replied. She sent another message. I cried in the parking lot. Why? Because no one else was fixing it. I stared at the phone, and we still managed. I let out a slow breath. That was the moment. The first time she faced a financial consequence entirely on her own and survived it. That night, my parents came over unexpectedly. My mother's face was pale. We heard about the SUV, she said quietly. Yes, I replied. Are they okay? They signed a settlement. My father sat down heavily at the kitchen table. I offered to cover it, he admitted. And? I asked. She said no. I didn't react. She said they had it handled, he continued. There was something like awe in his voice. She's never said no to help before, my mother whispered. No, I agreed. We sat there for a moment. She's different, my father said finally. Yes. And you're not pushing her? No. You're not advising. Only when she asks. My mother looked at me carefully. I used to think you were too hard on her, she said. And now? I think we were too soft. That admission felt heavier than any apology Madison had offered. She used to panic, my father said quietly. Now she calculates. I almost smiled. Yes. They left after dinner, subdued but thoughtful. Later that week, Madison came by with Greg. Not with paperwork this time, with a folded sheet of paper. What's that? I asked. Budget projection, she said. She laid it on the kitchen counter. 4 years mapped out. Debt decreasing steadily. Emergency fund rising slowly. Income projections conservative. No sudden windfalls, no dramatic jumps. Just steady reduction. You did this? I asked. Yes. No color coding? She rolled her eyes slightly. I'm not you. I looked at the numbers. It wasn't elegant, but it was realistic. You accounted for interest fluctuations? I asked. Yes. Medical emergencies? 3,000 buffer in year 2. Kids' activities? Scaled. She watched my face carefully. Well? It's solid, I said. She exhaled slowly. Solid, she repeated. Yes. Greg stood quietly beside her. We argued about this for hours, he said, but we stayed within the numbers. That's discipline, I replied. Madison leaned against the counter. I thought discipline meant restriction, she said. It means alignment. With what? With reality, She nodded slowly. I keep replaying that night in my head, she admitted. The screaming? Yes. And? I see myself now, and I cringe. That's growth, I said. It's embarrassing. Yes. But I don't feel angry at you anymore. That's good. I feel grateful. I didn't respond immediately. Gratitude used to be currency she spent carelessly. Now it felt earned. Don't be grateful, I said finally. Be consistent. She laughed softly. You really don't let up. No. She grew quiet again. You know what's strange? She asked. What? I don't miss the SUV. I raised an eyebrow. You loved that thing. I loved what it signaled. And now? I like not worrying about the payment. That mattered more than she realized. Greg nodded slowly. It was leased furniture on wheels, he said. Madison groaned. Don't start. I smiled faintly. Laminate is underrated, I said. She laughed. The sound wasn't sharp or defensive. It was lighter. When they left, I stood in the doorway watching the gray sedan pull away. No spectacle, no revving engine, just forward motion. I went back inside and opened Ethan's college fund again. The number had grown steadily. Not dramatically. Just predictably. Compound interest, compound discipline, compound boundaries. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table alone, I thought about something Madison had said. We were living like Avery was inheritance. That line echoed. I had never meant to be safety net. But I had allowed it. And allowance creates expectation. Expectation creates dependency. Dependency creates resentment. The steakhouse had been loud. The SUV had been expensive. But the real correction was quiet. It was in settlement papers signed without my name, in budgets drawn without my oversight, in parents offering rescue and hearing no, in a sister who finally understood that stability isn't inherited, it's built. And once built, it doesn't need to be flashy, it just needs to hold. That night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't think about what might collapse. I thought about what was finally standing on its own. The post went up on a Sunday afternoon. I wasn't expecting it. I was folding laundry in the living room when my phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications. At first, I ignored them. Family group chats had a way of reigniting minor things into unnecessary debates. Then Daniel walked in, holding his own phone. Have you seen this? He asked carefully. Seen what? He handed me the screen. Madison had posted. Family isn't about who pays the bill. It's about who shows up when you fall. I've learned some hard lessons this year about loyalty and pride. Sometimes the people you think will protect you choose to expose you instead. But exposure can feel like betrayal when you're not ready to face yourself. Growth hurts. But I'm grateful for the wake-up call. No names, no tags. But the undertone was clear. I read it twice, then a third time. My pulse didn't spike. That surprised me. She didn't attack you, Daniel said quietly. No. But she positioned herself as wounded. Yes. The comments were already stacking up. You're so brave. Family can be cruel. Proud of your growth. Then one that made me pause. Sometimes tough love is the only love that sticks. That one had more likes than the others. Interesting. I didn't comment. I didn't react. But 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Madison, I answered. You saw it, she said. Yes. You're not mad? No. Silence. You're not going to respond? She asked. No. Why? Because it's your narrative. She exhaled slowly. I didn't name you. I know. I wasn't blaming you. I know. She hesitated. I was trying to explain. To who? To myself. That was honest. It reads like ambiguity, I said gently. I didn't know how to write it without sounding defensive. You don't have to write it at all. She was quiet for a long moment. I didn't want people thinking you destroyed me. Did I? No. Then why clarify? She sighed. Because I used to think you did. That caught me off guard. And now? Now I think you interrupted me. That was different. Interrupted what? I asked. My illusion. I leaned back into the couch. That's accurate, she gave a small, tired laugh. People keep asking if we're okay, she said. Are we? Yes. Then that's enough. I wanted to control the narrative, she admitted. You always have. I don't want it to define me. It won't. How do you know? Because you stopped repeating it. Silence again. Mom texted me, she said. What did she say? She asked if I was shading you. Were you? No, I believed her. I don't want to fight you publicly, she said. I don't want to fight you privately. She let that sit. I don't regret the post, she added quietly. You don't have to. But I regret that I needed it. That made more sense. Sometimes closure needs words, I said, even if they're messy. Yes. She was quiet. Are you sure you're not mad? She asked again. I'm not. What are you? Steady. She laughed softly. You're impossible. I'm consistent. She exhaled. Okay. After we hung up, I set my phone down and went back to folding laundry. Daniel watched me carefully. You're not bothered? He asked. It's not escalation, I said. She still frames it like you exposed her. I did. That doesn't sting? No. Why? Because exposure isn't cruelty. He nodded slowly. Do you think she posted to test you? Probably. And? I didn't bite. That was the shift. Months ago, I would have felt compelled to correct, to clarify, to defend. Now I felt detached. Later that evening, my father called. She didn't mean to criticize you, he said immediately. I know. She's trying to process. I know. She's embarrassed. That's not fatal. He was quiet. She's changed, he said. Yes. You have too. Yes. Less reactive. Yes. More deliberate. I almost smiled. That's accurate. He hesitated. I'm proud of both of you, he said finally. That caught me off guard. Why? Because you didn't fracture. We were already cracked, I replied gently. He didn't argue. That night, I scrolled through the comments again. Most were supportive, some dramatic, a few speculative. No one tagged me directly, no one escalated it. It was a contained ripple, and I let it remain that way. The next day, Madison texted. Someone messaged me privately asking if you were abusive. I stared at that. What did you say? I typed. That you weren't. Good. I didn't over-explain. Good. She paused. It felt strange defending you. Why? Because I used to think I was defending myself from you. I read that twice. And now? Now I think I was defending my pride. That was more accurate. I didn't respond immediately. Then I typed, Pride is expensive. She sent back a laughing emoji. Stop! I didn't. 2 days later, we ran into each other at a grocery store. Completely unplanned. She was in the produce section comparing price per pound tags. That alone would have been unthinkable a year ago. Hey, she said, holding up 2 bags of apples. Which is cheaper per ounce? I glanced at the labels. Bag. Thought so. We stood there for a moment, awkward but calm. I almost deleted the post, she admitted. Why? Because I didn't want you thinking I was blaming you. I don't, she studied my face. You're not curious what people are saying? No. Really? Really? She shook her head slightly. You don't chase narrative. No. I used to live inside it. I know. She placed the apples in her cart. I don't miss that. What? The performance. That's good. She hesitated. Do you ever regret not paying that night? No. Not even a little? No. She nodded slowly. I don't regret it either, she said. That was new. You regret the screaming, I replied. Yes. But not the lesson. No. We walked toward checkout together. Separate carts, separate totals, no shared payment, no awkwardness, just parallel. As she paid with her debit card, she glanced at me. Separate checks, she said lightly. Yes. She smiled faintly. Feels normal now. Yes, and it did. Later that week, Ethan asked me something unexpected. Mom? Yes? Why do grown-ups care so much about what other people think? I considered that. Because it feels like survival, I said. Is it? No. What is? Character. He nodded slowly. Is Aunt Madison okay? Yes. Because she doesn't yell anymore. That's good. He smiled faintly. Boundaries, he said again. Yes. The word had become almost sacred in our house. Not aggressive, not defensive, just structural. That night, as I closed my laptop and glanced once more at Ethan's steadily growing 529 account, I realized something important. The steakhouse had been public, the post had been public, but the correction? It had become private. And private growth doesn't need applause, it just needs consistency. I turned off the lights and went to bed without scrolling one more time. Because when you stop chasing narrative, narrative stops chasing you. And that was the quietest victory of all. The invitation arrived in a cream envelope with my name written in my mother's careful handwriting. Sunday dinner. All of us. No agenda. That last part made me pause. No agenda. I held the card for a moment before setting it on the kitchen counter. Daniel looked up from the stove. What is it? Family dinner, I said. He raised an eyebrow. That sounds ominous. Apparently no agenda. He laughed softly. That's definitely an agenda. I didn't disagree. It had been nearly 8 months since the steakhouse, since the repossession, since the budget spreadsheets, since the social media ripple. Things had stabilized, but stability doesn't erase history. It just builds over it. Are we going? He asked. Yes. You're sure? Yes. He studied my face for a moment. You don't look tense. I'm not. That surprised both of us. Sunday evening arrived with crisp air and early fall light. The trees on my parents' street were beginning to yellow at the edges. When we pulled into the driveway, Madison's gray sedan was already there. No SUV, no dramatic entrance, just parked neatly along the curb. Inside, the house smelled like roast chicken and rosemary. Familiar. Safe. My mother hugged me a little longer than usual. You look good, she said. I feel good. My father clasped Daniel's shoulder and nodded once. There was a quiet respect in the room that hadn't existed before. Madison stood near the dining table arranging plates. She looked up when we walked in. Hey, she said. Hey. No tension, no stiffness, just measured normal. Ethan ran past us into the living room where Greg was setting up a board game. Laughter drifted down the hallway. Children adapt faster than adults. We gathered at the table. 12 chairs. That detail did not go unnoticed. My father cleared his throat before sitting down. Before we eat, he said, I want to say something. The air shifted slightly. Not heavy, just attentive. We haven't handled things well in the past, he continued. My mother stared down at her folded napkin. We confused helping with protecting, he said, and protecting with enabling. Madison looked still. I didn't interrupt. We thought love meant cushioning every fall, my father continued, but sometimes it meant extending the fall. Silence settled over the table. We're sorry, my mother said softly. That word carried weight, not dramatic, not performative, just quiet. For what? Madison asked gently. For shielding you from consequence, my father replied. And for asking Avery to carry more than her share, my mother added. I didn't look away. That's true, I said evenly. My father nodded. It is. There was no defensiveness in his voice, just acknowledgement. Madison inhaled slowly. I asked for it, she said. No, my mother replied quickly. We offered it. Both things were true, and both could coexist. I didn't know how to say no, my mother whispered. Madison looked at her. I didn't know how to hear it, she said. The room felt steady. No raised voices, no accusations, just clarity. I folded my hands on the table. This isn't about blame, I said. No, my father agreed. It's about correction. Correction. I liked that word. Dinner began, plates passed, wine poured, moderately. No expensive labels, no overindulgence, just enough. Greg leaned over to me quietly at one point. I was angry at you, he admitted. I know. I thought you humiliated us. Yes, I don't think that anymore. What changed? I realized humiliation requires denial. I met his eyes. And? I was in denial. I nodded once. That's honest. He exhaled slowly. I needed that, Bill. I almost smiled. Most people don't say that. I wouldn't have said it 6 months ago. We ate in relative calm. Conversation drifted toward normal things: work, school, weather. The tension that once clung to these dinners was absent. Not because history vanished, but because it had been confronted. After dessert, my mother brought out coffee. Madison stood up unexpectedly. I need to say something too, she said. The room quieted again. I used to think Avery was rigid, she began. I didn't react. I thought she was cold, calculating, harsh. She swallowed. I didn't understand that she was just consistent. My mother's eyes filled slightly. I thought flexibility meant love, Madison continued. But it meant avoidance. No one interrupted. I blamed her for drawing lines, she said, because it forced me to see that I didn't have any. Silence. I don't feel exposed anymore, she said softly. I feel accountable. That was new. I don't need rescue, she added, and I don't want it. My father nodded slowly. We won't offer it, he said. The words were simple, but they landed. I felt something shift again, not explosive, structural. After dinner, we moved into the living room. Ethan and his cousins were building something out of blocks on the floor. Madison sat beside him without directing, without correcting, just participating. I watched her for a moment. The performance was gone, not replaced with shame, replaced with presence. Later, as coats were gathered and goodbyes exchanged, my mother pulled me aside. I didn't realize how much pressure we put on you, she said quietly. You didn't see it. I see it now. That's enough. She hesitated. Are we okay? Yes. Truly? Yes. She exhaled. That feels different. It is. When we stepped outside into the cool evening air, Daniel slipped his hand into mine. That felt clean, he said. Yes. No undercurrent. No. He glanced back at the house. They're adjusting. Yes. And you? I'm steady. He smiled faintly. You always are. As we drove home, Ethan chattered about the board game. No mention of tension, no memory of screaming. Just ordinary. When we pulled into our driveway, I sat for a moment before turning off the engine. Reservation for 12, Daniel said lightly. I glanced at him. What? 12 seats, no more. I smiled faintly. Yes. Inside the house, I checked Ethan's 529 account again. The number had grown modestly, no leaps, no miracles, just steady accumulation, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but builds futures. That night, lying in bed, I thought about something my father had said. Correction. That was what this had been. Not revenge, not humiliation, not dominance. Correction. Boundaries are not walls. They are measurements. They define load-bearing capacity. And for the first time in a long time, our family structure felt aligned. Not perfect, not dramatic, just aligned. And alignment, I had learned, is stronger than applause. The call came from my mother on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly projections. Avery, she said, her voice thin, it's about your father. My pen stopped moving. What about him? He had chest pain. My body went cold, but my voice didn't. Where is he? Northwestern. I'm on my way. I ended the call, shut my laptop, and walked straight to Daniel's office. Dad's at the hospital, I said. He stood up immediately. I'll get Ethan from school, he replied. No panic, just movement. By the time I reached the hospital, Madison was already there. She was sitting rigidly in a molded plastic chair outside the cardiology wing. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. He's stable, she said before I could ask. What happened? Chest pain during breakfast. Heart attack? Minor, she said. They're calling it a mild cardiac event. I sat beside her. We didn't hug, we didn't dramatize, we just waited. After an hour, the doctor came out. Stress contributed, he explained. Diet, age, and long-term strain. Strain. That word echoed. We were allowed in briefly. My father looked smaller in the hospital bed, wires on his chest, machines humming softly. He looked at us and tried to smile. Didn't think I'd get this much attention, he muttered. Don't be funny, my mother snapped, eyes red. He squeezed her hand weakly. I'm fine. You're not, Madison said softly. He looked at her carefully. I'm fine enough, he corrected. The doctor laid out the next steps. Diet changes, reduced stress, medication, rest. After the meeting, Madison and I stepped into the hallway. This is because of us, she said quietly. No. Yes. No, I repeated firmly. She looked at me sharply. You don't think so? I think he's 71 and ate like he was 35. She almost laughed. Then her face crumpled slightly. I made everything heavier, she whispered. You didn't give him cholesterol. That's not what I mean. I know. She leaned back against the wall. I thought I was the fragile one, she said. You were. And now he is. I shook my head. He's human. Silence. I don't want to stress him anymore, she said. Then don't. She looked at me. That simple? Yes. It's not. It is. She stared down at her shoes. I used to call him whenever I panicked, she admitted. I know. And he'd try to fix it. Yes. I can't do that anymore. No. She swallowed. I won't. That mattered. When my father was discharged 2 days later, we all gathered at my parents' house to organize the kitchen. Low sodium, less red meat, more vegetables. Madison stood in front of the pantry holding a bag of chips. These are gone, she said. Yes, I replied. Even the good ones? Yes. She dropped them into the trash without arguing. That alone was a shift. We worked side by side quietly. No one assigned roles. No one competed. Just shared effort. Later, my father sat at the table watching us. You two are different, he said. In what way? Madison asked. Less sharp. I raised an eyebrow. Sharp like knives, he clarified. Now you're more like measuring tapes. I almost smiled. That's oddly specific, he shrugged. I had time to think in the hospital. About what? I asked. Load-bearing walls. I froze slightly. Excuse me? I realized I've been leaning on you both in different ways, he said, and neither of you should carry me. You don't carry us, Madison said quickly. I do, he replied. Emotionally. Silence settled. I let your crises become mine, he continued, looking at Madison. And I let Avery carry responsibility alone. I didn't interrupt. That wasn't fair, he said. No, I agreed softly. Madison wiped at her eyes. I don't want to stress you anymore, she said. Then don't panic aloud, he replied gently. She nodded. Later that evening, when Daniel and I were driving home, he glanced at me. You didn't go into fixer mode, he observed. No. Even with your dad in a hospital bed. I can't manage his arteries, I said quietly. He smiled faintly. True. But I can manage my boundaries. He nodded. That's new. Yes. The next week was quiet. Doctor appointments, meal prep adjustments, medication schedules. Madison took on responsibility without dramatizing it. She handled insurance calls, follow-up appointments. I didn't step in unless asked. She didn't ask often. One afternoon she called. I scheduled Dad's stress test, she said. Good. And I set reminders for his medication. Good. I'm not spiraling. That's good, she laughed softly. You love that word. Yes. I keep expecting you to critique something. Why? Because you used to. No, I corrected. I used to intervene. She went quiet. There's a difference? Yes. She absorbed that. I don't want to be your project, she said suddenly. You're not. Was I? Yes. Silence. I didn't know how not to be. You're learning. She exhaled slowly. I think Dad's heart scare scared me more than the repo. Why? Because money feels recoverable. People don't. That was true. I sat with that thought long after we hung up. The steakhouse had been about pride, the SUV about denial, but this was about fragility, and fragility changes priorities. That Sunday, we gathered again at my parents' house for a low-sodium dinner. No wine, no heavy desserts, just grilled chicken and roasted vegetables. Madison handed my father his medication without being prompted. He took it without resistance. Separate checks, he joked weakly. Madison smiled. Separate stress, she replied. I looked at her. She wasn't joking. She meant it. After dinner, as we stood in the kitchen washing dishes, she spoke quietly. I used to think money was the biggest issue. It wasn't. No. It was boundaries. Yes. And fear, she added. Of what? Of being ordinary. I turned toward her. You are ordinary. She laughed. Exactly. And that's fine. Yes. She dried her hands slowly. I don't need to impress anyone anymore. That's exhausting anyway. Yes. We stood in silence for a moment. You didn't rescue me, she said softly. No. And you didn't rescue Dad. No. But you stayed. Yes, she nodded. That's different. It was. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about my father in the hospital, about machines beeping steadily, about Madison's hands clasped tightly in her lap, about how quickly everything can shift. The steakhouse had felt like a war. This felt like maintenance. Maintenance is quieter, but it lasts longer. Boundaries don't just protect money, they protect hearts. And for the first time, I understood that drawing a line had saved more than a dinner bill. It had reduced strain. On all of us. And strain, left unchecked, breaks things. We were no longer breaking, we were recalibrating, and that felt stronger than any public victory. The holiday season came quietly that year. No dramatic group texts, no frantic last-minute dinner reservations, no subtle financial probes disguised as tradition. Just a simple message from my mother in early November. Thanksgiving at your place this year, if you're willing. I stared at the screen for a moment. 2 years ago, that message would have come with unspoken assumptions. This time it felt respectful. Yes, I typed back, but we'll keep it small, 12 seats. She replied almost instantly. 12 is perfect. I didn't miss the significance. When I told Daniel, he smiled. Still 12, he said. Always 12. Does that number comfort you now? It anchors me. He nodded. It used to represent conflict. Yes. And now? Structure. That felt accurate. The week leading up to Thanksgiving was calm. Madison texted asking what she could bring. Not performatively, not competitively, just plainly. Vegetables or dessert? She asked. Vegetables, I replied. Roasted Brussels sprouts. Done. No negotiation, no subtle testing. Just alignment. On Thanksgiving morning, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet. I moved through the kitchen methodically. Turkey in the oven. Timers set. Side dishes staged. I wasn't bracing. I was preparing. There's a difference. By noon, the house filled with the smell of rosemary and garlic. Ethan hovered nearby, asking if he could help. You can set the table, I said. 12? He asked automatically. Yes. He counted the plates carefully. No extras, no folding chairs in the corner, just 12. At 1:30, Madison arrived. She stepped out of the gray sedan wearing a wool sweater and jeans. No designer bag, no dramatic entrance, just a casserole dish balanced carefully in her hands. Hey, she said as I opened the door. Hey, she handed me the dish. They might be a little overdone, she admitted. That's fine. I measured the oil. I smiled faintly. I'm proud of you." She rolled her eyes. "Don't start." But she was smiling. My parents arrived next. My father looked healthier, thinner, more deliberate. He hugged Ethan tightly. "Smells good," he said. "It's simple," I replied. "Simple's better." We gathered in the living room before dinner. No tension, no scanning for unspoken shifts, just conversation. Greg helped Daniel with the drinks: water, iced tea, a modest bottle of wine. One. Madison caught my eye briefly. No commentary, no performance. At 3 sharp, we sat down. 12 seats, no more. My father cleared his throat. "To boundaries," he said unexpectedly. Madison laughed softly. "To growth," she added. "To structure," Daniel said. "To ordinary," I finished. We clinked glasses lightly. Dinner unfolded without incident. No one overreached. No one overindulged. No one attempted to dominate conversation. Madison asked Ethan about school. Listened, really listened. Greg talked about work overtime, cautiously returning. No bragging, no inflation, just facts. At one point, my mother reached for more gravy, then paused. "Do I need to ask permission?" she teased lightly. I raised an eyebrow. "You know the limits." She smiled. We laughed. It wasn't sharp. It was shared. After dinner, while the kids cleared plates, Madison stood beside me at the sink. "You know what's strange?" she said quietly. "What?" "I'm not anxious." "That's good." "Stop," I smiled. "I'm serious," she continued. "I used to feel like I needed to prove something at these dinners." "You don't." "I know." She rinsed a plate slowly. "I don't feel smaller without the SUV," she said. "You're not." "I don't feel invisible without expensive wine." "You're not." She dried her hands. "I feel steady." I nodded. "That's better than impressive." She leaned against the counter. "I thought you were controlling," she admitted. "I was controlled." "That's different." "Yes." Silence settled between us, comfortable. "I don't think about that steakhouse night with anger anymore," she said softly. "What do you think about?" "The chair." I looked at her. "Ethan's chair," she clarified. I swallowed. "I see it now." "That's growth," I said. "It hurts less," she replied. Later, as dessert was served, my father looked around the table. "This feels lighter," he said. "It is," my mother replied. "Why?" he asked. "Because no one's waiting to be rescued," Madison answered quietly. That was the truth. No safety net being stretched thin, no hidden expectations under the table. Just food, just presents, just 12 seats. After dinner, Ethan pulled Madison into the living room to show her his latest Lego build. She knelt beside him without checking her phone, without posing for photos, just building. I watched for a moment. No performance, no narrative, just participation. Daniel joined me near the doorway. "You're not scanning the room," he observed. "No." "You used to." "I know." "What changed?" "I stopped preparing for collapse." He nodded slowly. "That's powerful. It's peaceful." When my parents left later that evening, my mother hugged me tightly. "You've built something solid here," she whispered. "I didn't build it alone." She pulled back slightly. "No," she said, "but you held it." Madison lingered in the doorway after Greg and the kids walked ahead. "I'm not embarrassed anymore," she said quietly. "About what?" "About needing correction." I looked at her carefully. "That's rare." "I know." She hesitated. "I don't want to go back." "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you like steady now." She smiled faintly. "Yes," she admitted. "I do." She stepped outside into the cool evening air. I watched her drive away slowly. No rush, no show, just ordinary. Inside, as we stacked dishes and turned off lights, I felt something settle deeper than relief. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even closure. It was equilibrium. The steakhouse had been a rupture. This was restoration. Not flashy, not loud, just consistent. Later that night, as I checked Ethan's college fund one more time, still growing, still compounding, I realized something. That number represented more than tuition. It represented discipline. It represented restraint. It represented saying no when yes would have been easier in the moment. And as I turned off the screen, I understood something else. We weren't a fractured family anymore. We weren't perfect. But we were aligned. And alignment is stronger than performance. 12 seats, 12 boundaries, 12 people choosing structure over spectacle. That was enough. The anniversary of that night arrived without warning. Not on a calendar, not with a notification. Just a quiet awareness when I drove past the steakhouse on my way home from a supplier meeting downtown. The sign was the same. Polished brass letters. Valet stand out front. Soft amber lighting visible through the windows. I slowed slightly at the light. Daniel noticed. "You're thinking about it," he said. "Yes." "Does it still feel sharp?" "No." "What does it feel like?" "Distant." He nodded. "Do you want to go back?" The question hung there. I didn't answer immediately. "I think so," I said finally. "That's new." "Yes?" The next day I texted Madison. "I'm thinking about having dinner at that steakhouse next week. Just us and Ethan. 1 year. There was a long pause before she replied. "That's bold. It's neutral." Another pause. "Do you want me there?" I stared at the screen. This wasn't an invitation. This was a test. "No," I typed. "Not because you're excluded, because this is something I need to close quietly." 3 dots appeared almost instantly. "I understand." And then, "Thank you for telling me." That mattered. The following Friday, I made a reservation. 12 seats were no longer necessary, just 3. But I still asked the hostess for a specific table, not the alcove, a smaller one near the window. When we walked in, the maitre d' recognized me. "Ms. Morgan," he said warmly. "It's been a while." "Yes." He glanced at Ethan. "Happy early birthday again." Ethan grinned. 11.5 now, he corrected. We sat. No tension in my shoulders, no scanning for disruption, just dinner. Daniel ordered the house red, 1 glass. I ordered sparkling water. Ethan ordered pasta. As we waited for appetizers, Daniel studied me carefully. "You're not bracing," he said. "No." "You're not reliving it." "No." "Then what are you doing?" "Reclaiming." He nodded slowly. "From who?" "From memory." That felt accurate. When the breadbasket arrived, I caught myself smiling faintly, not because it was expensive, but because it was ordinary. 1 year ago, this room had felt like a battlefield. Now it felt like furniture. The waiter placed the menus down. "Would you like to start with a bottle?" he asked politely. "No," I replied evenly. "Just separate checks." Daniel smirked slightly. "Habit," he murmured. "Principle," I corrected gently. Ethan glanced up. "Why do you always say that?" he asked. "Because it's clear." "About what?" "Responsibility?" He nodded slowly, accepting that answer. Midway through dinner, my phone buzzed. "Madison." I hesitated for a moment before opening it. "How does it feel?" she wrote. "Calm," I replied. I expected more from her. There was a pause. Then, "I drove past there yesterday and kept going." I stared at that. "Why?" I typed. "I'm not ready. I thought about that." "That's okay," I wrote back. Another pause. "Are you angry at me for not going?" "No." "Are you judging me?" "No." 3 dots again. "Thank you." I set my phone down. Daniel watched me carefully. "She checking in?" he asked. "Yes." "She not coming?" "No." He nodded. "That's fair." "Yes." Ethan finished his pasta and leaned back in his chair. "This place is fancy," he said. "It's structured," I replied. He laughed. "Everything is structured to you." "Yes." "And that's good?" "Yes." He considered that. "I like it," he said. That meant more than he realized. After dessert, the waiter brought the check. 3 separate bills, neat, clear, contained. I paid mine without hesitation. No drama, no lingering tension. As we stood to leave, I glanced around the dining room. No ghosts, No echo of screaming, no humiliation. Just quiet clinking of silverware and low conversation. We stepped outside into the cool night air. Daniel slipped his hand into mine. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said. "From what?" "From proving anything." That was the truth. That night had once felt like a declaration. Now it felt like history. On the drive home, Ethan asked a question I hadn't expected. "Was this where Aunt Madison yelled?" Daniel glanced at me. "Yes," I said calmly. "Why?" "Because she was scared." "Of what?" "Of paying." He frowned slightly. "That's silly." "It was bigger than money," I said gently. "What was it?" "Pride." He nodded slowly. "Did you yell?" "No." "Why not?" "Because yelling doesn't fix math." He laughed. "That's funny." "It's true." When we got home, I tucked him into bed. "Are you proud of me?" he asked suddenly. "For what?" "For not yelling at school when that kid cut in line." I smiled softly. "Yes." "Because yelling doesn't fix math?" "Yes." He grinned sleepily. "Good." After he fell asleep, Daniel and I sat in the living room with the lights low. "You closed it," he said quietly. "Yes." "It doesn't own you anymore." "No." He studied me for a moment. "Did it ever?" I thought about that. "It did," I admitted. "For a while." "In what way?" "I kept replaying it, checking for mistakes." "And?" "I didn't make one." He nodded slowly. "You made a line." "Yes." The next morning, Madison called. "How was it?" she asked. "Uneventful." She exhaled softly. "That's good." "Yes." "I'm not there yet," she admitted. "You don't have to be." I still see myself standing up and screaming. "I see Ethan's chair." Silence. "That hurts more," she said. "Yes." She took a breath. "I'm glad you went." "So am I." "I think I'll go someday," she said. "When you're steady." Yes. That word again. Steady. "I'm getting there," she added. "I know." We didn't talk long. There was no need. Later that afternoon, I logged into Ethan's 529 account again. The original $1,247 I had redirected into it a year ago had grown. Not dramatically, but measurably. Interest compounds quietly. Like discipline, like boundaries, like correction. I closed the laptop and stood at the kitchen window watching the late afternoon light spill across the yard. I thought about the restaurant, about the screaming, about the repo, about the hospital, about Thanksgiving, about vegetables measured carefully in oil, about separate checks. None of it felt sharp anymore, just integrated. There are moments that define you, and then there are moments you redefine. That steakhouse used to be the site of rupture. Now it was just a building with decent pasta and predictable lighting. And that was the final shift. Not that the story disappeared, but that it stopped dominating the narrative. I had drawn a boundary. Madison had crossed it once. And then she had learned to see it, not as punishment, as structure. And structure, once respected, becomes invisible, which is exactly how it should be. I turned off the kitchen lights and went upstairs without checking my phone one more time, because when a memory stops demanding rehearsal, you know it no longer controls you. And that was the quietest victory of all. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked between utility bills and a catalog Ethan had already circled in red marker. It was addressed to Madison, but the return address was unfamiliar. Out of state, formal, corporate. I didn't open it. I texted her instead. "Mail here for you. Looks official." She called within minutes. "Don't open it," she said immediately. "I wasn't going to." "I think I know what it is." Her voice was steady. That alone told me something had changed. "What?" I asked. "Settlement offer." "For what?" "Credit card consolidation lawsuit." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "They escalated?" "Yes." "Amount?" $34,000 remaining. That was lower than before. "You've been paying," I said. "Yes." "But?" "They're offering a lump sum reduction." "For how much?" 24. Silence. "That's significant." Yes. But we don't have 24,000, she added quickly. I assumed. She exhaled slowly. I'm not asking you, she said before I could speak. I know. I just needed to say it out loud. Okay. There was no panic in her voice, just calculation. What are you thinking? I asked. Liquidate savings. All of it? Yes. That leaves what? 600. That's thin. I know. Alternative? Continue payments for 3 more years. Interest would eat a chunk of that. You ran the numbers? I asked. 3 times. And? The settlement saves 8,000. That's real. Yes. But it empties cushion. Yes. Silence stretched between us. I hate this, she admitted quietly. Which part? Choosing between security and progress. I didn't respond immediately. That's adulthood, I said finally. She laughed softly. That's cruel. It's math. Silence again. Greg thinks we should do it, she said. And you? I'm scared. Of what? Of being back at 0. You're not at 0, I said. 600 feels like 0. It's not. But it feels like it. I know. She was quiet for a long time. I don't want to borrow, she said. You won't. I don't want to ask Dad. You won't. I don't want to ask you. You won't. She exhaled slowly. I think we should take it. Then take it. You're not going to tell me to keep the cushion? You already know the trade-off. I want you to say it. No. Why? Because this is yours. Silence. I hate that, she whispered. I know. But I didn't bend. She breathed in slowly. Okay, she said. We'll take it. Good, she groaned softly. Stop. I almost smiled. When do they need the payment? I asked. 30 days. Can you liquidate without penalty? Yes. Then execute. She was quiet. Why are you so calm? She asked. Because it's contained. What does that mean? You're not spiraling. You're deciding. She absorbed that. That feels different, she said. It is. The next week moved quickly. Paperwork, transfers, wire confirmations. Madison texted me the morning after they wired the funds. It's done. How do you feel? I asked. Like I jumped off a cliff and didn't die. That's growth, I replied. Stop. She added another message. I cried when the confirmation email came through. Why? Because it's the first time I paid something down instead of pushing it forward. That mattered. A week later, the official settlement confirmation arrived. Debt reduced, balance cleared, account closed. She called me that night. It's official, she said. Yes. I'm not in debt anymore. Yes. I keep waiting for a catch. There isn't one. Silence. I'm proud of myself, she said carefully. You should be. That feels strange. Why? I'm used to someone else being proud for me. You don't need that. She let that settle. I used to think money was power, she said. It's leverage. Over what? Choices. Silence. I feel lighter, she admitted. Yes. But also exposed. How? No cushion. You'll rebuild it. I know. She paused. I don't regret not asking you, she added. I know. I wanted to. I know. But I didn't. That's the point, she laughed softly. I used to resent you. I know. For not softening. I know. And now I'm grateful you didn't. I didn't respond immediately. Don't say anything, she added quickly. I wasn't. Good. That weekend we all gathered at my parents' house again. No special occasion, just Sunday dinner. Madison looked different, not flashy, not dramatic, just upright. Greg hugged my father a little longer than usual. My mother set down a simple salad, no excess. My father looked around the table. I heard the news, he said. Madison nodded. It's done. Paid? Yes. He leaned back in his chair slowly. That's impressive. She shook her head. It's disciplined. I glanced at her. She caught it and smiled faintly. After dinner, while clearing dishes, she spoke quietly beside me. "I almost called you when the wire went through." "Why?" "Because I felt empty." "Empty?" "Like I'd cut something away." "You did." "And I didn't know what would fill it." "What did?" "Relief." She exhaled softly. "And quiet." I nodded. "That's healthy." She rinsed a plate slowly. "I used to fill silence with spending." "I know. Now I just sit in it." "That's stronger." She smiled faintly. "I don't hate that steakhouse anymore," she said. "Good. I don't hate you for it." "I know. I think it saved me." Silence. "Don't get smug," she added quickly. "I won't." Later that night, I checked Ethan's college fund again. The compounding had continued. Small gains, consistent, predictable, like boundaries, like settlements, like discipline. I thought about Madison wiring away nearly all her savings, about choosing reduction over comfort, about sitting with $600 and not collapsing. That was new, not glamorous, not dramatic, but solid. A year ago, she had screamed over $1,247. Now she had voluntarily wired $24,000 to erase debt. Without screaming, without asking, without collapsing. That was correction completed. As I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I realized something quietly powerful. The revenge wasn't the separate check. It wasn't the police cruiser. It wasn't the repo. It wasn't the Facebook post. It was this. Watching someone choose discipline over illusion. Watching someone grow without being rescued. Watching a family realign around structure instead of spectacle. That was the real shift. And it didn't need applause. It just needed consistency. And for the first time in a long time, consistency was exactly what we had. It has been exactly 1 year since I stood in the middle of that steakhouse and said no. Not whispered, not negotiated, not softened, just no. Tonight, I am back in the same city, at the same kitchen table, but the air feels different. Ethan is upstairs studying for a math test. Daniel is rinsing dishes beside me. And my phone lights up with a message from Madison. Emergency fund hit 5,000 today. I stare at the screen for a moment before smiling. "Proud of you," I type back. No emojis, no drama. Just truth. $5,000. That number isn't flashy. It won't buy a luxury SUV. It won't cover a seafood tower and 3 bottles of $150 wine. But it represents something stronger. It represents restraint. It represents repetition. It represents a woman who once screamed over a restaurant bill and now celebrates a savings milestone in silence. Daniel dries his hands and glances at me. "Good news?" he asks. "Yes." "She hit a goal?" "Yes." He nods slowly. "She did the work." "Yes. And that matters." A year ago, this story looked like revenge. A sister ordering lobster and expensive wine, a hijacked birthday dinner, a public confrontation, police lights flashing outside a downtown Chicago steakhouse at 9:15 in the evening. It looked dramatic. It looked like family drama at its worst. But that wasn't the real story. The real story started after the screaming stopped. It started when the separate checks became a boundary instead of a stunt. It started when I stopped absorbing impact. When I stopped cushioning someone else's consequences. When I stopped confusing peacekeeping with self-betrayal. Madison didn't change overnight. She didn't wake up suddenly disciplined. She spiraled first. She blamed me. She posted vague things on social media about betrayal. She cried in parking lots. She sat on a curb the day her leased SUV was repossessed. She faced credit card debt that had quietly grown to over $60,000. She signed settlement papers. She rebuilt from $600 in savings. She wired $24,000 without asking for rescue. She measured olive oil. She compared apples by the ounce. She paid down debt instead of pushing it forward. That is not a dramatic transformation. It is a slow one. And slow is harder. Because slow requires repetition. I walk upstairs and pause outside Ethan's room. He is bent over his desk, pencil in hand. "Mom," he says without looking up. "Yes? Can I ask you something?" "Of course." He glances at me. "Are you still mad about that night?" "No." "Why not?" "Because it did what it needed to do." He frowned slightly. What do you mean? It corrected something. He nods slowly. Like when you don't fix your math mistake right away and it messes up the whole page. Exactly like that. He smiles faintly. So you erased it? No. What then? I stopped letting it multiply. He grins. You're obsessed with math. Yes. And boundaries. Yes. He shrugs. I think it's cool. That's enough for me. Later that evening, Madison calls. 5,000, she repeats, almost like she doesn't believe it. Yes. I keep thinking about that steakhouse bill. What about it? It was $1,247. Yes. That number felt catastrophic then. And now? Now it feels small. It was never about the number. I know. She exhales slowly. I don't hate that version of me anymore, she says quietly. That's important. I understand her. That's growth. She was scared. Yes. She thought money meant safety. It doesn't. No. It means options. Yes. Silence settles between us. I used to think you were lucky, she says again. With what? With discipline, I smile faintly. It wasn't luck. I know. It was choice. Yes. She pauses. Do you ever regret not paying that bill? She asks one last time. No. Not even to avoid the police. No. Not even to avoid humiliating me? No. She exhales softly. Good. We don't say anything for a few seconds. I'm glad you didn't, she adds quietly. So am I. After we hang up, I sit alone at the kitchen table. The house is quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned. I think about that sentence I said a year ago. Reservation is for 12, not 12-ish, not 12 plus, and not on my tab. It sounded sharp at the time. Now it sounds clear. Clarity can feel cruel to someone who benefits from confusion. But clarity is kindness to yourself. That was the real lesson. Not about Lobster, not about expensive wine, not about separate checks, about boundaries, about refusing to fund delusion, about understanding that generosity without limits isn't virtue, it's erosion, and erosion eventually collapses structures. I didn't collapse, I reinforced. Madison didn't crumble, she recalibrated. My parents stopped confusing enabling with love. My father adjusted his diet after a cardiac scare and stopped carrying everyone's stress like it was his responsibility to absorb. My mother stopped calling daily to vent anxiety that wasn't mine to carry. Greg works overtime when he needs to. They drive a used sedan, they celebrate savings milestones instead of curated appearances. And Ethan grows up watching adults correct themselves instead of pretending nothing is wrong. That is not a revenge story. It's a restoration story, but restoration starts with a hard no. If you're listening to this and you're wondering whether you should have paid that bill just to keep the peace, let me tell you something. Peace built on self-betrayal is not peace. It is delayed resentment. If you are constantly being treated like the family bank account, if every holiday turns into financial manipulation, if every birthday becomes an opportunity for someone else's entitlement, ask yourself this, are you being generous or are you funding a fantasy? There is a difference. And sometimes the most powerful gift you can give a person who exploits you is a public, unapologetic no. Not screamed, not theatrical, just steady. I didn't humiliate my sister. Reality did. I just stepped out of the way. And once I stopped absorbing the impact, she was forced to face the weight of her own choices. That weight changed her. Not overnight, not magically, but permanently. Tonight, I look around my home, at the mortgage we can afford, at the college fund compounding quietly, at the family dinners that no longer carry tension, at the absence of chaos. And I know something for certain. You cannot live a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget, and you certainly cannot charge it to someone else's dignity. If you've ever had to draw a line with a toxic family member, if you've ever been called cold for protecting your peace, if you've ever been pressured to be the bigger person by paying for someone else's irresponsibility, I want to hear your story. Did you say yes and regret it? Or did you finally say no? Tell me in the comments. I read them. Every single one. And if this story gave you even a small amount of courage to draw your own boundary, stay here. Subscribe. There are more stories about family drama, betrayal, hidden power, and the quiet strength of choosing yourself. Because sometimes the most life-changing moment isn't loud. It's a calm voice across a white tablecloth saying, "Separate checks," and meaning it.